Story 1. Ada for ruining my family's New Year's Eve by refusing to join the fun. Because I didn't want to be the DD again? Original post. Hey Reddit, I, 26F, need some serious perspective. I'm starting to think I might be the asshole, but I still feel like I'm in the right LOL. Every New Year's Eve, my family has a big party at my aunt and uncle's house, and every year, without fail, I end up being the DD. Don't get me wrong, I love my family, but it's starting to bug me. It's been like this since I was 19, even before I was legally allowed to drink. I don't drink much, maybe a glass of wine or a beer, but I don't get plastered. I'm fine with driving people home if they need it, but for the past few years, everyone expects me to not drink so I can drive them back. Every year it's the same. Oh, can you drive? You're not drinking anyway. I always say yes because I don't want to let anyone down. Fast forward to this year's New Year's Eve. I told my family ahead of time I wasn't going to be the DD anymore. I just wanted to enjoy the night, have a couple of drinks, and not be responsible for getting everyone home. I even told my cousin, who usually gets really sloshed, that I wasn't driving this year, and she was fine with it. When I got to the party, it was the usual chaos. People were drinking, laughing, and having a good time. I was enjoying myself, but around 11 my cousin came over and asked if I was ready to drive everyone home. I reminded her I'm not driving tonight, I'm here to enjoy the party. She looked at me like I was crazy and said, "Come on, you always drive. Don't be a bitch." Which, like WTF, I tried to explain calmly that I wasn't being a bitch, just that I wasn't going to be the chauffeur anymore. Then, my aunt overheard and pulled me aside. She lectured me, saying, "We all agreed last year you'd be driving. You know how much we rely on you. Everyone else is too tipsy, and Ubering is so unsafe. Just drive this one time for the family." I felt a ton of pressure, but refused. I told her I'm not their chauffeur, and wasn't going to do it again just because no one else could figure out their own ride. My aunt got upset, saying I was being selfish and that we're family. She said I'm the only one who doesn't get too drunk, so it makes sense for me to help out. I told her I had already had 3 beers, so I wasn't even legally supposed to drive myself. That's when I snapped. I told them it's not my job to be their DD every year, just because I'm the only one who doesn't get blackout drunk. They needed to figure out their own rides this time. Then I got up and left. I felt bad walking out, but I didn't want to be a doormat anymore. I spent the rest of New Year's Eve at home, watching Netflix and eating leftover pasta with my boyfriend. My family texted me, calling me dramatic, selfish, and saying I ruined the night. They said I was being super sensitive and that everyone was disappointed in me. Everyone's demanding an apology out of me even now. And by the way, I got home perfectly safe by Uber, but anyways, Reddit, ATA? Update January 21st, 2025, 15 days later. So, update LOL? Before I get on to that, I want to address some popular questions from my last post. Some people got confused and asked similar questions, so I thought it might be nice to answer them here. How do I give everyone a ride home? My family lives about an hour and a half from my aunt's house, so I'd fill my car with everyone I could and take them home. The next day, they'd take their spouses' cars to pick up the ones they left. Stupid, I know. How did I get home? I Ubered. Why was my cousin asking to leave at 11? She was drunk and probably had no idea what time it was. My aunt overheard me getting a little upset and pulled me aside, which sparked everything. Update time. I ended up sending a text to our family group chat, including those who didn't make it to the party but heard about what happened. I'll copy and paste what I said here. Hey everyone, I'm not going to apologize for what happened on New Year's Eve. I told you all well in advance that I wasn't going to be the designated driver this year, and I expected you to respect that. I'm not anyone's personal chauffeur, and I'm done being treated like I'm responsible for everyone else's lack of planning. When cousin called me a bitch for not driving, that was uncalled for. And aunt, name, lecturing me about being selfish and ruining the night because I chose to enjoy myself instead of taking on that responsibility again. I love you all, but I can't be your punching bag anymore. I'm not going to keep letting myself be the one who sacrifices for everyone else's convenience. I've done it for years, and I'm done. Next year, I think I'll be spending New Year's somewhere else. I wish you all safe rides home and hope you'll be able to figure something out. I'll be taking some space from everyone and hope you will understand. I then made the painful decision of blocking my parents who have been calling me terrible names and making me feel like complete shit since this happened. I never realized how dark my childhood was with all the gaslighting. My parents are probably the reason I have such severe anxiety. My sister and brother are on my side and equally pissed off at our family, so I still got them at least. I really do want to thank you all. I've always known something was off with my family, but I never realized how much I was taken for granted, how unloved I felt until now. Thank you for helping me realize that I'm worth more. And to end on a positive note, my boyfriend is now my fiancé. A few days after my post, he proposed. His original plan was to take me to see some cutesy light displays in our town after I got home and propose there, which made my heart melt a little since I knew he was so tired after working LOL. But when he saw me walk in crying, he read the room and switched things up. When I was feeling better, he took me to dinner and proposed there. I have no idea how the wedding will go or if my parents will be there, but I'm excited to spend it with the people who love and appreciate me. Story 2. I think this woman is using me for free childcare new update. Original post. I 24M teach boxing in my spare time and 1 day a week I teach it to kids. There's a mom who I'm starting to feel like is taking advantage of these classes. She's increasingly late with picking up her kid after the session. To give some context, this is a rich woman. It's not that she's out working a job. She is a stay-at-home parent. No other kids. She told me all this because another thing she loves to do is have really long conversations with me on top of already being late. She's been late most of March, 3 classes. I talked to her about it at the end of the month and she apologized and said it won't happen again. It did. X2 now. So I started timing her. The second week of April, no class the first week, she arrived 45 minutes late, then spent maybe 20 minutes talking to me. The other day, I timed her again. She got there around the 1 hour mark. I made a point to show her my timer and I gave her a warning that I will remove her kid from my class. She tried to derail the conversation, so I raised the timer and turned it on again. She said I was being unjustifiably rude, exact words. I explained politely that I have other obligations and her consistent lateness throws my schedule off. She didn't want to have this conversation, stomped to the driver's side of her car. Her kid lowered his window to say thank you and bye to me. I told him bye and added, "Tell your mom to stop being late." She reported our conversation to my boss but twisted it. She said that I threatened her kid with getting kicked out of the program. I didn't say it like that. And I didn't say it to her kid. There are other instructors. I was just implying, to her, that I won't have him in my group. My boss still gave me a lecture about how I don't have that power and can't make the statements I did. He went over professionalism and how I'm being too hard on this mom who could have other circumstances going on. But I'm not getting paid for the hour after this class that I spend hanging out with her kid. The kid's great, but I have things to do. For people who work with kids, what's the etiquette here? Do I give parents grace? I told my boss I'm going to start adding up all the hours, and one of them is going to have to pay me. Ada. Update. May 1st, 2024, 1.5 weeks later. Previous post. I appreciate the advice I got on the post I made. I learned a lot from you. Here's the update. I took various notes from the people who gave me tips here. I wrote a detailed email to my boss and CC'd other people who run this program, including co-instructors. I did this for transparency, accountability, and to put pressure on my boss to provide a policy around the issue instead of him dealing with us all individually, case by case. My boss didn't respond to the email. Instead, he called me in to see him. I kind of had a feeling he'd do that. He asked me why I sent the email CCing everyone and was clearly not happy about my approach. He kept trying to minimize the situation and make me feel that I'm in the wrong. He told me that I'm being greedy, that my attitude about one parent being late is exaggerated and I'm looking for problems. I should essentially just wait around after hours if I need to, sometimes, unpaid because it's a program for kids. I should do this with some heart and do it for the kids. I had to turn my face to hide the fact that I wanted to laugh in that moment, but mostly I was frustrated. Having proper policies in place not only protects the staff, It protects the kids, not to mention his fucking business. After I made my perspective clear, in a mostly professional manner, he came around a little. Unfortunately, he flat out told me he will not back pay me for the time that I've logged waiting for this, Mom, but he will implement a late policy moving forward. He's followed through on that. He tried to throw in other useless incentives for me. I didn't accept them. That mom wasn't late this week. She did try to catch my eye when she picked her son up, and I ignored her. She ended up getting out of her car and asked me if I saw her waving. I kept ignoring her. She wore me down because she kept following me around while I locked up. I informed her why she's getting the silent treatment. She apologized and also tried to write me a check on the spot. I didn't take the money. I told her, honestly, I might quit instead. I am sharing this because the woman clearly lives in her own world. Here, just take my money and stop being mad at me. I was so furious. It took everything in me to keep the words that I said to her to a minimum. I am on the fence about just letting this go. Maybe the program will get smoother with time. It's not a lot of money worth fighting over. I am so disappointed in my boss. I've known him for a long time as a mentor friend. Being his employee has been something else. The program itself is very new and disorganized. Due to differences of opinion about how it's run, I doubt I will stay with it. This is my first time working a job that involves kids. My actual profession is unrelated to boxing. This was mostly something I picked up spontaneously because I saw the merit in it, and I wanted to do my part to help. I admit I could use the extra money too. I don't mean to be greedy or stingy, but I live in an insanely expensive city and I take care of someone with expensive medical bills. I haven't proofread this, but it looks longer than I wanted it to be. I'm sorry, I'm tired. Last update. I got other instructors to get on my boss's case with me. I also informed him I have to quit the kids' class and I will quit the training I do with adults too. Leave the gym and our friendship if he doesn't hear me out respectfully. The reason I wanted to avoid reporting my boss is because I have a relationship with him and nearly everyone at this gym going back almost 10 years. I didn't want to resort to making a report without exploring every other option first. My boss caved. I'll get paid for the extra hours I logged on the next paycheck. Moving forward, I will no longer teach the kids, because although we have a policy and late pickup fee in place, as it stands right now, instructors are still responsible to stay back until the last kid leaves and my boss doesn't want to negotiate on that. I can't stay behind after classes. I have other obligations the same day as the class I teach. It's unfortunate because this one parent is the only one currently abusing the system because she can afford to. That kid's mom was late this week again by 30 minutes. Showed her my timer. I also told her I've quit. She asked me if the late warnings reset when a new instructor takes over. They don't. She then tried to hire me out from under my boss as her kid's private instructor. I said no, but I might reconsider if she ever wants lessons. I would love to give that woman hell. All right. That's the end of that. I feel bad I couldn't stick it out with this kids program, but it's too disorganized for me right now. New update. Hey, so it's been a long time. I deleted the original posts off my page hoping I would stop getting messages about it. But now I have this update. Is it allowed? I don't remember the etiquette here. I found that my post is still on Reddit. Someone DM'd it to me. Catch up here. The short of it is, you guys were right. This woman had a crush on me, or some kind of interest in the least. And I was too angry at her. The situation to notice. We're seeing each other now. I won't get your hopes up because it's probably just temporary. Longer story. Towards the end of last year, she approached me. She said she was separating from her husband and hinted that the marriage was abusive. She said her reason for getting in touch with me was to take me up on my offer about teaching her how to box. I told her I was only offering back then so I could make her suffer. The thing is, I don't think joining a combat sport immediately as a means to process abuse is always the best form of action. I get why it's empowering, but if you're not doing therapy or something alongside it, it might frame things for you in an unhealthy way, so I think you need both. That's just my personal opinion. I felt ill-equipped to be the starting point of her healing or whatever, even though she was reaching out to me so sincerely. So I redirected her to someone else. She started going to those classes I connected her with, and occasionally texted me about them. Straightforward texts, questions, asking me my opinion, etc. We'd have short exchanges, a few texts back and forth with no pattern, and a lot of gaps in between. About a week ago, I ran into her in person and she convinced me to have coffee with her, and I don't know how to explain it. There is some kind of intensity between us, and we decided to see where it leads. It's not serious. Given how many people thought something was there and how oblivious I was to it, I felt this might be worth sharing. I didn't know her age back then, but I found out she's 32. I'm 25. I know. Story 3. Aita for cutting contact with my childhood best friend because she demanded that I break up with my fiancé? Original post, January 12, 2025. Hey everyone! I, 21F, cut contact with one of my closest childhood friends, Mary, 21F, a few weeks ago. While I feel relieved she's out of my life, most of my family and mutual friends think I overreacted, and now I'm starting to second-guess my decision. I'm going to put some rather irrelevant background information here. Mary and I practically grew up as sisters. We were neighbors, and our parents started arranging playdates for us before we could even walk. From kindergarten to secondary school, we did everything together. If I wasn't at her house, she was at mine. I trusted her completely and never thought of her as anything other than my best friend. Things changed when Mary moved away for university. At first I missed her, but over time I noticed how much easier my life felt without her constant presence. I wasn't being criticized, guilt-tripped, or forced to justify my choices anymore. It became clear how much control she'd had over me. Mary had a way of dominating every aspect of my life. She'd dismiss my hobbies and pressure me to quit them, and if she didn't like one of my friends, I'd have to cut ties. You could call me a pushover. But when you grow up with someone like that, it's hard to see the manipulation for what it is. Things really came to a head when I met my now fiancé, Dave, 27M. He's amazing, kind, supportive, and everything I've ever wanted in a partner. We clicked instantly, and he's honestly the best thing that's ever happened to me. But of course, Mary didn't approve. She immediately tried to plant seeds of doubt, saying he was too old, he'd cheat, or he was only using me. Thankfully, for once, I didn't listen to her. And I'm so glad I didn't. In December, Dave surprised me with a dream vacation, and during the trip, he proposed. Everything about it was perfect. He planned every little detail, and it was more magical than I could have ever imagined. I was over the moon and couldn't wait to share the news with everyone. Naturally, I told Mary, expecting at least some excitement, but instead, she downplayed the entire thing. She nitpicked the proposal, saying how she would have done it differently and what could have been better. It stung, but I brushed it off and reminded her that it was my proposal, not hers. A few weeks later, we met in person for the first time in months. That's when things completely fell apart. Out of nowhere, Mary told me I should break up with Dave. When I asked why, her reasoning had nothing to do with me. Instead, she compared him to her boyfriend, Julian, 22M, saying things like, "Dave makes more money than Julian," and "Dave can give you everything, while I have to work for what I want." It was clear she wasn't concerned about me. She was just jealous. She couldn't handle the fact that for once my life seemed better than hers. That was the breaking point for me. I told her to leave my house, and afterward I sent her a long message explaining how hurt and disappointed I was. I told her that her behavior was unacceptable and that I didn't want her to contact me again. Since then, it feels like she's told everyone in our social circle. Mutual friends and even some family members have reached out, saying I was too harsh and should have handled things differently. They said, "That's just how Mary is. You've known her your whole life. She's always been in the spotlight and gotten what she wanted." Some even accused me of breaking her heart and told me it was wrong to choose my fiancé over a lifelong friend. Even my mom said she expected better of me, and that's what's making me question my decision. Did I overreact? Mary has been a huge part of my life for as long as I can remember. Sure, she has her flaws, but we've also shared countless good times and memories. Am I throwing away years of friendship over this? Should I try to fix things, or was cutting her off the right choice? Since some people in the comments are claiming this story is fake. Unfortunately, it's not. I obviously can't prove it to you, but honestly, what would be the point of making up a story and posting it on Reddit? I've never used Reddit before and have no idea what karma is or why anyone would want it. Also, yes, I let AI correct my text, mainly because I was incredibly angry when I wrote it and just kept rambling. English isn't my first language either. Combine these two things and you can probably imagine that my original text was all over the place. For clarification, I don't know exactly what Mary told my friends and family since most of the messages I received were pretty vague. I also didn't ask my mom what Mary said had happened. I was too angry to have a calm conversation after my mom told me I was being dramatic, which led to me yelling at her. All I know is that Mary admitted to asking me to break up with my fiancé, but I don't know if she explained why she wanted me to. Lastly, my parents raised Mary like a second daughter, and she's always incredibly kind in front of them. I guess that's why they didn't believe me. Maybe they're just in denial because it's easier for them to handle. I don't know, but I get it. Hearing something bad about someone you like for the first time can make you want to deny it. Update January 13th, 2025. Quick sum up because the update is quite long. I visited my parents today and found out that Mary told them that Dave was cheating on me. My dad ended up believing me, but my mom is still on the fence and unsure of who to believe. Also, everything that's irrelevant to the update is put in italics, so if you're only interested in the update, you can skip the italics part. I honestly didn't expect for so many people to read my post and to respond in such a positive way. Since some people asked for an update, which I also didn't expect, I'm going to explain what happened today. Also, just a quick heads up, this is probably going to be all over the place since a whole lot went down, and I'm mainly writing this down to understand what exactly happened myself. But first of all, I want to thank everyone who was so kind to share their own stories. It was honestly incredibly mind-blowing to see how many people went through the same thing that I did, and still do, and hearing that cutting contact with their toxic friends was the right thing to do made me even more sure about my own decision. To all those of you who were calling my post fake AI or karma farming, whatever that even means, I'm sorry to disappoint, but it's sadly not any of those things. This is something that's currently happening, and I needed to get off my chest. I'm glad that you've never had to go through something like that, but judging by the comments, my story isn't as unusual, unique as I thought, and as far-fetched as some of you might think. People often have toxic and narcissistic friends in their lives, especially when people around them have enabled their behavior from a young age, as in Mary's case. I'm also not going to have AI correct my grammar spelling mistakes this time, so buckle up for some fun sentences. Also, if someone knows any good websites that can correct whole sentences, not just autocorrect but also grammar and stuff, please tell me which ones there are. Me dealing with technology I've never used before is an absolute shit show. There's a reason why I'm studying law and not something IT-related, lol. I originally didn't want to talk about justify my relationship. It's simply not what my post is about directly or an issue that I'm currently facing, but I've decided to address it anyway. Why? I don't know, but there were a handful of people in the comments calling my fiancé a pedophile rapist or saying that he groomed me, and so on. Most of these comments seem to be coming from a place of concern, which I'm thankful for, but some didn't. So yeah, that's probably why I've decided to explain some things. I wasn't groomed, love-bombed, or anything like that. My fiancé is an amazing guy who never forced me to anything or rushed me into marriage, like some comments suggested. I'm marrying him because he's the one I want to spend my future with. Of course, we could have waited a few more years with getting engaged, married eventually, but what's the point in waiting when I'm, and he too obviously, sure that he's the right person for me? Marrying at a young age, I'm going to be 23 when we're officially getting married BTW, isn't for everyone, but it's also not uncommon. With some people, you simply have a feeling that it's going to work out great, and when it comes to him, I have that. Some other people also suggested that my parents took Mary's side because they don't like Dave, which couldn't be further from the truth. They love him dearly and have considered him part of the family after a few months of us dating. I'd really appreciate if people who are considering commenting solely on my relationship would refrain from it. It's not what this post is about, it's not the main focus, and I'm set on my decision to be with him. You can think whatever you want about my relationship, but at the end of the day, you don't know either of us or what our relationship is like. But now onto the actual update. We visited my parents around noon today, talked about everything, and tried to understand what had happened exactly. Turns out, Mary really was telling a made-up story while sprinkling in some truth here and there. Apparently, she told people, or at least my parents, that Dave was cheating on me with a co-worker of his, which is why she told me to break up with him. She said that this affair had been going on for at least 4 months, and that she knows about it because she'd seen them together at a cafe in a different city a few months ago. Let's assume this would be true. Why didn't she inform me or my parents sooner? Like, imagine you're best friends. Back then, boyfriend is cheating on her and you know about it. Wouldn't you tell her right away? This is also why I can't understand why my parents, especially my mom, would believe her in the first place. According to her story, I got incredibly mad, kicked her out, and haven't spoken to her since. Now, some of it is true, as you should know from my original post. For one, her telling me to break up with my fiancé, as well as me kicking her out and cutting contact. However, the whole story about Dave cheating on me is something I've heard about for the first time today, plus it's completely made up. Just to remind you, she told me to break up with him because Dave's a better boyfriend than Julian, her boyfriend. BTW, I also feel so sorry for him. I can't imagine how much she must push him around. My mom said that she didn't believe Dave was cheating on me, but was disappointed in me for how I handled the situation, especially since I couldn't have known if Mary wasn't telling the truth. She thought that cutting off my best friend for being concerned about me was too harsh and that we should have talked it out. I've also assumed that she's scared to lose longtime friends when I cut contact with Mary, which also turned out to be true. Mary told her mother what happened, who just so happened to be best friends with my mom. And according to my dad, Mary's mother is mad at me for treating her daughter badly and accused my mom of not raising me right. So there's that as well. After my mom explained what Mary had told her, I went on to tell her what really went down. The jealousy, the manipulation, the lies, all of it. Basically the things I've said in my original post, plus much more. She didn't believe me at first and said that I was blowing things out of proportion, that Mary had good intentions but simply didn't know how to communicate them well. I showed her some text messages between Mary and me, told her about past incidents, and my fiancé tried to back me up as best as he could since my mom wasn't listening at all and kept defending Mary. To say that I dug deep and told my parents about all sorts of things is an understatement. I even went as far as telling them about a sex incident. So yeah, I didn't leave out any details. My dad believed me from the get-go, but my mom kept going back to how great of a person Mary is and how she just wants the best for me. She also kept saying how I've never had an issue with Mary in the past, not true, and that I'm now creating unnecessary drama because of a misunderstanding. Maybe I'm creating unnecessary drama, maybe not. In my opinion, it's necessary, though. I've let her do whatever she wanted for far too long. At some point, my dad simply told her to shut up and to stop making excuses for Mary. So at least I have one parent on my side. My dad's always been a very non-confrontational person and never really stood his ground, especially when it came to my mom. But I found out that he thought that Mary didn't have a good influence on me growing up. He apparently also told my mom that he wanted to limit the contact between Mary and me when we were younger, but my mom didn't see his point and let our friendship continue. So basically this whole issue could have been avoided if my mom would have put her friendship with Mary's mother aside for her own family. Great. In the end, my mom said that she'd speak to Mary and ask her if what I've said is true, which honestly pissed me off. After everything I've told her, she still wants to crawl to Mary because apparently what her actual daughter says isn't good enough. She tried to justify it since Mary is her daughter too, and it's unfair to just hear out my side of the story, all right? But you already had a heartfelt conversation with Mary in which she was lying to you completely? After she said all of that, we started a screaming match. I know, not healthy, but it honestly felt so damn good to just let it all out. To say that I cried heavily out of frustration after talking to my mom is an understatement. And I'm so glad that my fiancé was with me because I sure as hell wouldn't have been able to drive home safely. But on a good note, I got ice cream and we watched my favorite show when we arrived back home, which made things better, lol. I've not told my mom that I'm considering not inviting her to my wedding. We're not planning to get married until next year anyway, so there's still enough time for her to make up her mind about who she'd rather believe, plus I don't want to create too big of a rift between me and her. As for mutual friends who took Mary's side, I've decided not to respond to them. I'm not sure if Mary told them the same story that she told my parents, but I honestly don't care. I don't want to see Mary ever again, or at least not in the foreseeable future, and mutual friends would make that a whole lot harder than it needs to be. Besides, they're not my only friends or close friends of mine. Dave's also okay with me not running after them to clear his name. If this whole situation should leave this friend group and turn public, I'm going to contact them. But right now, we don't see a point in dealing with Mary's minions. That's something someone called these friends in the comments below my original post. Loved it. Right now I'm just hoping that Mary messes up her story somehow, and that my mom is going to see her for who she really is. While she's been acting absolutely disgusting towards me and basically chooses Mary over me in this situation, I think that I can look past this. It's my mom, after all. Cutting off friends is one thing, but cutting off close family? That's a whole different story, and I'll try to mend things the best I can. If she's going to stay loyal to Mary, I don't know what I'm going to do, but that's not something I have to think about right now. Once again, thank you for your positive and helpful comments. I've read all of them, but they kept coming in at a rapid speed, and I didn't really know how to respond to most. Also, for those who went through something similar, I'm so sorry that this happened to you, and I'm incredibly glad that, as far as the comments go, all of you could find peace in your decision to cut toxic friends out of your lives. Update to January 15th, 2025. I just want to say this in advance. I don't know if my dad was telling the full truth. I do believe him, but he might have exaggerated or left things out. It's entirely possible that he lied to a certain extent. I personally don't think that, but then again, most of the things he told me yesterday I've heard about for the first time, and they make him seem incredibly innocent. Maybe he was lying. I don't know. This whole situation just makes me question who I can trust in general. So, we had dinner with my dad last night, and it went pretty well overall. We mainly talked about my mom and Mary. Apparently, my mom had always been concerned about what others thought about her, but when she met Mary's mother, it reached a whole new level. Mary's mother often criticized my mom for all sorts of things. Her parenting style, her clothes, her house, you name it. Whenever it was something that my mom could change, she changed it immediately to appease Mary's mother. That's also why I was put into dance classes when I was younger, because Mary's mother signed Mary up for dance classes, one of many examples. So, yeah, as most comments suggested, she's being pushed around by Mary's mom. Is she a narcissist? I don't know, I'm not a psychologist. One thing to know about Mary's family is that they do a damn good job at appearing perfect. Happy family, nice jobs, nice house, etc. I guess my mom bought their persona and tried to copy it. I'm not going to trash talk the whole family here, but let's just say that they have just as many flaws as any other family. Also, my mom was apparently talking shit about me to my dad, comparing me to Mary in basically every way, and she even said multiple times that she wished Mary was her real daughter. She also believes that I took away her chance to live her dream life. Fun fact, but according to my dad, my mom's apparently huge on family. She always wanted to have at least 4 children. Ironic, I know. She had a pretty traumatic birth experience with me, and doctors told her that she shouldn't try for children again. Yeah, apparently she's blaming me for that. She then hoped that she'd get to live her dream through me. Basically, that I have a lot of children. Bit of TMI right here, but I've mentioned it in the comments a few times already, so whatever. I can't get pregnant like at all, which means she, luckily, won't get any grandchildren from me. I guess she sticks so close to Mary and Mary's mother because she hopes to be a grandma to Mary's potential children. That's honestly so creepy and messed up in my opinion, but well, we're talking about my mom here. I also feel the need to clarify that I didn't know any of that. My mom never said anything negative about me to my face. Sure, there were some comparisons here and there, but nothing major or something that had an impact on me. It's always been just general stuff that parents tend to do, comparing grades, behavior, skills, etc. She's also never directly blamed me for her inability to have any more children and never said anything bad about me not being able to conceive. This is all just stuff she apparently said behind my back. She's always been pretty all right to me. She most definitely wasn't the best mom ever, but she wasn't horrible either. Just a person who, in my opinion, shouldn't have had a child in the first place. My dad also admitted that he'd considered divorcing her a few times but never went through with it because he was scared that my mom would get primary custody. He's currently considering it again, so let's see how that goes. As for why he never stood up to my mom, he genuinely didn't have a reason for it. He knew that my mom's never said anything like the things above to my face, so he didn't think that he should tell me, at least not until I moved out. He didn't engage in these type of conversations with my mom and kept telling her to stop every time, which caused a lot of fighting between them. I knew that their marriage was messed up, but I always thought this had different reasons. Also, my mom reached out to my mother-in-law and complained about Dave, how he changed me and stuff, referring to me cutting off Mary and choosing my fiancé over my best friend. My MIL, who's an absolute angel BTW, simply asked her why she's discussing this with her since Dave and I are adults. There's no need to contact her for it. My mom also told her that Mary said that Dave is cheating on me. She then simply told my mom, "Sounds like Mary's projecting," and hung up. I'm honestly so pissed that my mom tried to involve her in this situation, and I can't help but wonder if she tried to create conflict between my ML and my fiancé. Maybe she genuinely believes Mary and wanted to warn my ML, but I guess that would be wishful thinking. For some background, my ML was a single mom because her ex-boyfriend, Dave's father, cheated on her shortly after giving birth. As you might be able to imagine, she hates cheaters with a burning passion, and my mom obviously knew that. So yeah, I guess my mom talked to Mary, who doubled down, and my mom decided to believe her. I was expecting that this would happen, but honestly, I'm really disappointed. I'm not even sad, angry, or anything. Just absolutely disappointed and confused. I'm currently considering sending her one last text before cutting her out for now, but I don't know if I should give her the pleasure of receiving an explanation. I'm still on the fence about cutting ties with her in general, mainly for my dad's sake. Their marriage is rocky already, and although he's considering divorcing her, I'm not sure if he'll actually go through with it. Keeping in contact with one parent while not talking to the other one must put a whole lot of stress on the parent you're still in touch with, and I quite honestly don't want to worsen my dad's home life any further. It's so crazy how I've lost so many people who I considered important to me in such a short amount of time. This whole situation also made me question other people, like my dad, a whole lot. There were so many people in my life throughout all those years, and nobody said anything. Why didn't my grandparents step in, or my aunt, or family friends? I can't imagine that they didn't know about any of it. But then again, I didn't either. I also have no idea why I never noticed that my mom held some sort of resentment towards me. Shouldn't I was noticed? I mean, I've been living with her under one roof for 18 years. Yet I never imagined that she actually doesn't like me. Also, yes, Reddit became my new diary. Update 3, January 17th, 2025. Update 3. Eta for cutting contact with my childhood best friend because she demanded that I break up with my fiancé? This is just going to be a small update since not much happened, but I still want to share this because I think it's quite ironic. It's also pretty late at night, and I'm staying at a hotel right now. So sorry if some stuff doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I had a gig tonight, and Mary's ex-boyfriend, Julian, showed up after the show. Yes, ex-boyfriend. He came up to me and told me that he broke up with her this morning. He then got free drinks for the rest of the night, and we had an amazing time at the after-party, LOL. I've already mentioned this in the comments, but I told mutual friends, who asked, not those who attacked me, what really went down between Mary and me. I guess they've told other mutual friends, and it got around to Julian. He asked her if my story is true, and Mary apparently got really defensive. After some back and forth, she called him an option that she's keeping around until Dave's single or she finds someone better. He dumped her right there and then. Mary must have spiraled after that because she texted me over a new Instagram account and said that I've ruined her life. I don't believe in karma, but this honestly made my day. Also, I've called my grandparents and they didn't know how my mom really felt about me, which honestly puts my mind at ease a bit. At least I wasn't the only one being oblivious. I guess she did a really good job at hiding her true sentiments. For my parents, I've decided to go LC with my mom and keep in touch with my dad. He's not going to divorce her anytime soon for several reasons. I'm also still on the fence on whether to cut ties with my mom completely or not. While many people in the comments mention that they're not in contact with their families anymore, I don't feel ready for that yet. I want to have a conversation with my mom first, just so that I can hear what I've been told by my dad straight from her. But right now I don't want to have that conversation, so yeah, I'm basically keeping her around for now. Update 4 January 21st, 2025. I don't really know how to start this, so yeah. Mary hasn't tried to contact me again, but she started sending videos of her having fun with herself to Dave. It's been 3 so far, and they've all been sent through different burner accounts. He didn't respond to any of them, and we don't really know what we should do about it. He gets send videos like that quite often, but it's usually just 1 video per person, not 3 in a row sent by the same one, which makes them easier to ignore, block. So far, he's obviously deleted all videos she's sent him and blocked her on every account through which she tried to contact him. He hopes that if he's not going to respond, that she'll stop soon and well. I hope so too. It's honestly getting annoying hearing my best friend moan my fiancé's name. I also met up with my mom today. She texted me yesterday and asked me to meet up. She knows that Julian and Mary broke up and also knows the reason for it. I don't know how she's gotten the story. It apparently was a weird mismatch of Julian, Mary, and Mary's mom. My mom was pretty distraught when she told me this, and all of it didn't make a whole lot of sense. Mary told her this, Julian told her that, and so on. She ended up believing Julian over Mary for whatever reason. Maybe it was because last time I met up with my mom, I told her that Mary's interested in Dave, and that obviously matches Julian's story. I have no idea. I also don't know why Julian told her. I've asked him to talk to my mom after some people suggested it in the comments, but he seemed pretty apprehensive. I guess he ended up telling her anyway. Overall, she was very apologetic for not believing me and siding with Mary. She also asked me if Mary tried anything with Dave so far, and I told her about the videos. She's really mad at Mary and has blocked her number for now, and also wants to limit contact with Mary's mother, as far as I know, but doesn't really know how to go about it yet. They share a lot of hobbies and are basically in all the same clubs, book, sports, and so on. Typical late 50s mom stuff, basically. So yeah, I guess everything's fine. I'm still going to keep my distance from her, but she seemed very genuine about wanting to make things right. We're on a better path now, still not great, but we're getting there. This might also be the last update, unless something big should happen, but if everything's going to stay the way it's right now, there's not much to update on. Story 4. My 29F parents ghosted me 5 years ago after my wedding and now reached out. What do I do? Original. October 20th, 2021. TLDR. I'm married to my former boss. Parents did not take the marriage as well as I'd hoped and ignored me for 5 years, only to reach out when they saw a 5th anniversary Facebook post that mentioned our kids. Do I let them back in, or do I ignore them? My husband, 30 M, used to be my boss. About 9 years ago, I started working as his assistant. We spent about 2.5 years ignoring our mutual attraction until we gave in. We then went to HR, who reassigned me, and the whole thing was strictly above board from the time we began dating. I got pregnant about a year later, and my husband and I decided to just get married. While we'd only really been dating for about 1.5 years, we knew each other completely, loved each other, lived together, and there was a baby on the way. We knew how it would look, but I had to leave the company anyway due to problems with my new boss, so we didn't anticipate this causing any issues, except with my parents. They, 62M/57F, have always been overprotective, so I knew they wouldn't like me dating my boss and hadn't told them, but I had to tell them if I wanted them at my wedding. We decided to be mostly honest with them about how it was strictly professional until it wasn't, how the second it got unprofessional we went to HR, how he had never taken advantage of me but now we wanted to get married, and we wanted them there. We did not mention the baby because I felt that giving them that information in addition to the rest all at once would just break them. I was only about 4 months along when the wedding happened, so the bump was easily hidden by a flowy dress. The wedding itself went off without a hitch, and apart from my mother pulling me into the bathroom shortly before the ceremony to ask if I was sure about this, which I said I was, my parents seemed to take it well. The ceremony and reception were at 2 different venues, and we had to travel from one to the other, and my parents never arrived at the reception. I called them and got ignored, and then my brother called them, and they told him that they were going home. I don't remember the exact reason they gave, but it amounted to them being tired and uncomfortable. I tried contacting them after the wedding, but found that I was blocked on everything except email, which I used to send them a long letter essentially saying that I'm an adult who made an adult choice and I hope they can respect that. 5 years later, I have not heard from my parents since my wedding. My husband and I are not big on social media in general, but I recently posted something for our 5th anniversary in which I mentioned our 2 kids and third on the way. Within a month of making this post, my parents left a voicemail saying they saw the post, and having had no idea that they had grandchildren previously, now want to meet them. I haven't responded, and there have been a few follow-ups since then asking why I haven't. I don't know what to do, but my gut instinct is that 5 years is too long, and it's about the kids, not about them respecting my choices or relationship. However, I can't help but feel that I'm being unfair, and my brother agrees, because I told them in my email that if they could learn to respect my choice and my marriage eventually, then we could talk, and now I'm retroactively applying a time limit. Edit. Can't find a way to work this in organically, but my husband is not white. I am, as are my parents. I don't think this is a race thing or that my parents are racist, and neither does my husband, and we don't understand why they would want to meet our mixed-race children if they were racist, but this element is still gnawing at me. Should I reach out to them? If I did, how would we go about rebuilding the relationship? Update. October 22nd, 2021. TLDR, they're racists. I asked to talk yesterday. We were on Zoom within an hour. It was my parents and me and my husband. They asked to see the kids, and I said they could see them eventually, dependent on them earning our trust and convincing us they were going to be positive additions to the kids' lives. They asked to start by reading me a letter that they claimed to have written on my wedding day. It said that they were uncomfortable with me marrying my former boss, as they thought he took advantage of me. So they left between the wedding and reception to avoid a scene, but they wanted me to know they were here for me despite their issues with him. They added that they would have sent this to me the morning after my wedding, but then I sent my email about them needing to respect my choices, and they were so ashamed they couldn't bring themselves to send theirs. Seeing my anniversary post made them realize how much they've missed in 5 years, and they really don't want to miss any more. I had some questions, like what the big deal was with me marrying my former boss, and they said that it just wasn't what they had in mind for my wedding day and my future spouse. I asked why they even came to the wedding at all if they didn't support the marriage, and my dad responded that he wanted to walk his daughter down the aisle as it was the only chance he'd get. The way it was phrased implied that they had intentionally only come to the wedding so he could give me away, and always planned to leave halfway, and because he said my daughter and didn't talk to me directly, it was pretty clear he was thinking about my older sister, who passed away. My husband caught that too, and said that if they were talking about me, they should address me directly, then added that if they had planned to leave, they should have told us as we wouldn't have invited them. And the fact they waited 5 years to reach out was going to take more reasons than shame as a father, he didn't understand how they could ignore their daughter for years, or only get back in touch when we had kids. My dad snapped that he wasn't going to take this from a cushy, a slur meaning dark-skinned. My mother immediately tried to run damage control, but I ended the call. They have since messaged me several times trying to explain that calling my husband a racial slur wasn't indicative of a racist attitude, and he wouldn't have said that in front of the kids, so they should still get to meet them. I've spent 5 years wondering how they were so offended by me marrying my boss that it earned no contact for half a decade. Turns out they're just racist. It's almost nice to find out. If it was just the boss thing, I would have sympathy for them, and we might even be able to reconcile. But with this, it's now just a question of if I'm going to knowingly expose my mixed-race children to a couple of racists, which I am obviously not going to do. Story 5. I keep meeting my birth mom, but she doesn't know it's me. Original post: she had me when she was 14, and I, 24M, was given up for adoption. My parents told me about her growing up. I still have the letter she wrote me that she asked if they could give it to me if they wanted. It's crazy reading it sometimes and knowing it was a literal child who wrote it saying she's sorry she couldn't be my mommy, but she hopes I'm happy. She was open to having contact, but we moved for my dad's job when I was 11, and then it seemed impossible to find her. But luckily I did. She's working at this small restaurant, and I keep going, but she doesn't know it's me. We talk sometimes, and she seems like a nice lady. Sometime when she says something like, "Do you want a refill, honey?" or uses another term like that, I want to tell her. IDK why it makes me nervous. We talk sometimes, and she seems really genuine. If it's not super busy, she's more open to talking about random stuff. I literally drive 2 hours to come eat at this place just to see her. And it's like she knows me already because I'm there once or 2 times a week for the past 3 months, so she always says hi with a big smile. But man, if only she knew. Update. Well, I did it, I told her. And yeah, it was pretty heavy. My heart was even beating fast. I kept trying to think how to tell her. Many of the comments on my last post here mentioned writing her a letter just how she wrote a letter for me. Originally, that was the plan, but for me it felt like I needed to say it. Oh, really quick, I want to say thanks to everyone for their love and support. Mostly to all the birth parents out there who shared their stories with me. That's what really helped push me to have the courage to confront her. It meant so much, so thanks. Everything happened day before yesterday, BTW. I did wait for her to be done with her shift, and that was when they were closing the restaurant already, and waited in the parking lot. We said hi when she saw me first, but then I told her there was something serious that she needed to know. First told her sorry for keeping it from her this long. She didn't react until I actually pulled out her letter, and she started bawling from there, like screaming and crying at the same time, and didn't even have to finish the whole "I'm your son" speech. She just saw it and knew. It was crazy. Next thing I know, she's hugging me instantly, but then she pulled back and asked if it's okay to hug me. OFC it is, and we're just there hugging and crying in the parking lot. It hit her hard, though. Her legs gave out for a second, so I had to actually hold her up while she's still hugging me for a min. What really got me was her saying to me, "Look how big you got." Also, hearing her cry made me cry too. She went back to open the restaurant up. She wouldn't take no for an answer. We had coffee, ate a slice of their pie inside, and talked. So many stuff we talked about. She told me the second time I came to the restaurant she got a feeling, but for her it was hard to believe it was me. So that feeling she had was pushed way down, because she told me for years after I was adopted she saw kids that would be my age and used to think they were me. Then she would be crying in public. It fucked with her mind a lot and made her depressed, so she didn't want to do the same when she saw me, getting her hopes up like that. She says I look so much like my biological dad when he was younger, though. We talked about him too. They stayed in contact with each other in case I ever reached out to one of them so it would be easier to contact the other. I didn't have hope about finding my biological dad since he was never mentioned, so I'm glad they both planned for this future scenario. She told me about how they wanted to keep me. Especially my biological dad, he didn't want me to be adopted. But he knew they had to because they were just kids. It took him a long time to get past it after I was born, she told me. That's why he didn't leave anything, because he didn't want to believe he might not see me again. We talked for hours, till almost 2 in the morning. They closed at 11. She just wanted to know everything about me, but her main thing was, Am I happy? Were my parents good to me? Did I have a happy childhood? And I did. I told her thank you for helping to give me this life. We both cried again. She cried the most. Everything was very emotional for her. Sometimes she would look really happy but then get sad again. After my 18th birthday, she was hoping I would find her, that's why she stayed in the same city. But since I didn't, she always thought maybe I resented her, wasn't told I'm adopted, or maybe had decided it was better not to have her around. It made me feel bad for not telling her sooner. She told me it's not my fault, and I did right going at my own pace. Honestly, she's so sweet. The way she kept looking at me with the biggest smile, it made me emotional sometimes. Makes you think, how can someone who's been a total stranger her whole life look at you with so much love? It's wild. We learned so much about each other. She asked me if we could have dinner soon to keep talking, and if at some point in the future, if I'm interested, come over to her house so I can meet her husband. That all sounded really great. We exchanged numbers. After I left, she sent a text telling me thank you for giving her this gift that she didn't know if it would ever come. My girlfriend came over and she hugged me while I cried. I wasn't sad, BTW, these were happy tears. Everything went better than I expected. There was still emotionally heavy stuff, but I'm still glad that we got to open up to each other. Story 6. My boyfriend doesn't want to marry me because I'm an immigrant. I, 29F, moved to the U.S. 7 years ago as a grad school student from Indonesia. I met my boyfriend, 30M, a few months after I moved, and we've been together ever since. My boyfriend is a U.S. citizen. After I graduated, we had a serious discussion about where our relationship was headed. I made it very clear that I wanted to eventually get married and have children. My BF echoed the sentiments. I remember asking him if he saw that happening with me because I didn't want to be in a relationship with no future. He told me he loved me and that we were definitely headed in that direction. As of last week, we've been dating for 7 years. We've occasionally talked about marriage, but we were both busy with our respective careers, so the timing didn't seem quite right. However, recently my company announced that there's a chance that my department's work will be outsourced. I'm on an H-1B visa, temporary worker, so this means that I need to start looking for a job ASAP if I want to continue staying in the U.S. Last week, during our anniversary, I brought this up. I asked him if he thought it was the right time to think about getting married, as that will also help with sorting out my visa issues. He looked like he was about to vomit. After much prodding, he confessed that he wasn't planning on us getting married before I was able to get a green card, permanent resident, in the U.S. I was incredibly confused because he'd never mentioned this before. His reason was that he didn't want to be used as a visa mule, his words, not mine, by me, and that he wanted to make sure that I married him because I loved him, and not because it was a ticket to getting to stay in the U.S., which can only happen when I get a GC. It took me a while to process what he said, and I asked him if he'd be okay to move to Indonesia with me, which he wasn't. I did not react well and ended up leaving because I couldn't deal with what just happened. I am still in disbelief. I started dating him because he was the kindest, most thoughtful, and generous man I'd met. I now feel like I wasted 7 years. While the visa issues are certainly a problem, I did not date him with the intention of making him my safety net. I cannot believe that even after nearly a decade together, he doesn't know what kind of person I am. I feel like this relationship is possibly over, and it hurts. It hurts so much. Update. A few days back, I made a post about how my BF of 7 years didn't want to marry me because I was an immigrant on an H-1B, and he didn't want to be a visa mule. I got a lot of wonderful comments and DMs, a few trolls too, but that's expected from Reddit haha. Because the thread got locked and the post was subsequently removed, because I have a low karma account, I was unable to respond to anyone. I'm posting this update to do that, plus add in some more things that have transpired since. TLDR at the bottom, addressing some of the stuff in the comments. I've been on an H-1B visa for a bit more than 2 years now. I was on STEM Opt for about 3 years after grad school. I had terrible luck with the H-1B lottery, and I got one in the last round I was eligible to apply in. Getting PR in the U.S. is not easy. I know people who've been here for 15+ years who are still waiting for their PR. For those of you who DM'd me calling me a gold digger, You guys made me LOL. I am aware of the legalities around sponsoring a spouse for a PR, including the financial aspect. It shouldn't have been a problem for the following reasons. I'm a STEM major who recently shifted into management. I work for a large company and I do quite well for myself. My boyfriend is a teacher and our incomes are not comparable. He earns around $60K, I earn close to $300K. We've been living together for approximately 6 years. We have a shared account to pay for expenses like rent and utilities that we both deposit a percentage of our salary into. The rest of our money goes into our own private accounts and we don't manage each other's money. Because I'm pretty frugal, I've saved up quite a bit of money in the form of savings plus investments. If my boyfriend was worried about the legality of sponsoring me financially for 10+ years, I would have happily discussed moving the money around. I was even considering buying a house, so we could have made that a joint ownership thing. The point is, we could have figured it out. I haven't relied on him financially ever, and I didn't intend on doing that in the future. I might not have considered everything, but you have to note that I thought about the marriage for visa thing very recently, only when the threat of possibly having to leave loomed over me. This isn't something I'd thought about in detail at all. Regarding my situation back home in Indonesia, I come from a very religious and conservative family and had a horrible childhood. My family doesn't support my career choices. I cut contact with my family when I moved to the US, so they are not in the picture at all. I was on great terms with BF's family. They loved me. Now for the actual update. He is now my ex-boyfriend. I took a few days to collect myself and then reached out to him wanting to talk. He agreed. It turns out that he has been insecure about earning less than I did for a while. Apparently his friends have been poking fun at our relationship, calling me the sugar mommy because I take care of most of the expenses. He never told me this until now. He apparently didn't feel like an equal because our pay differs so much, and started feeling that I was only with him as a quick way to get a PR here. I was speechless. I couldn't believe that his friends gaslighted him into doubting our relationship. I reminded him how he had supported me when I was in grad school, like getting me groceries when I had little money to spare, allowing me to stay with him rent-free in my last year of grad school to help me minimize expenses so I didn't have to take out a loan, letting me use his car when I was attending interviews. I told him that he did them because he loved me, and me taking on the majority of household expenses, since I started working, is my way of paying him back for all the things he did for me back then. He said that he gets what I'm saying, but also that he didn't expect me to start earning more than him straight off the bat. I asked if there was any chance he'd consider going to couples therapy, like some of you had suggested, and he declined because he didn't think he was being unreasonable. He said that he wanted to be the provider in a relationship, and that he didn't feel like one in ours, so there's no going back from this unless I quit my job and found another that paid substantially less, which isn't going to happen. Well, long story short, we broke up. His family is in disbelief. They were hoping that he would propose soon. I've moved into an Airbnb for now. A little bit of good news to end this update with. My company offered me a similar role in a different department. However, this is based out of France, and there's a small decrease in pay. I've always dreamed about living in Europe, and I've accepted this offer. I've signed the relocation agreement, and I'll move there in the next 8-12 weeks. Story 7. I, 31M, and my wife, 29F, had a baby last December. It was a traumatic birth, and my wife developed postpartum depression. While she was originally going to go back to work after the birth, she's been struggling enough that we decided to wait until our daughter was a year old and reassess. She has been going to therapy weekly. With my wife home full-time, I've had to work increased hours. This is something we discussed prior to making this decision, and she knew this from the start. A few weeks ago, my boss approached me about a project that would require a lot of overtime in a short amount of time. It would both be great financially and for my career. I talked to my wife about it, and she agreed that I should say yes to my boss. For the 4 weeks I'd be working on this, my ML and her best friend Jessie, 29F name changed, would come help out with some of the duties that I typically do. Jessie is a Sam with a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. She began coming over during the day and would watch the kids with my wife. 3 weeks into the project, it became clear that we'd need a few more weeks to get it together. I went home that night and talked to my wife about it. She said she was okay with it, but got very cold in the days after. It wasn't unusual behavior over the past few months, so I didn't think much about it and tried not to take it personally. During the last week of the project, I got home one night and saw that Jessie was still at the house. I didn't think much about it, said hi to her and my wife, and then went to go check on our daughter. Before I could get to her room, I heard Jessie say something along the lines of, "He doesn't even stop to greet you. Definitely a sign." I turned around and asked what it was a sign of. Immediately my wife started crying, and Jessie started accusing me of having an affair. She told me that I must hate my wife because she has PPD, and am not attracted to her because she gained weight from the pregnancy. Neither of these things are true. I'm trying my best to help my wife through her PPD while supporting our family. And I think she looks great how she is right now. She just hasn't wanted to have sex, and I haven't pushed. Jessie then demanded to see my phone. I told her no. She told me that's a sign that I'm guilty. I told my wife that I would let her see my phone if she wanted to. She nodded and something inside me broke. I guess it was the thought that she actually believed I was having an affair really got to me, and that she didn't trust me after everything we've been through. Well, she looked through the phone and there was no evidence. Jessie started saying that I deleted the evidence. She started screaming and woke up our daughter, so I told her to get out of the house. Eventually she left, and I went to calm our daughter since my wife was still on the couch crying. When my daughter was asleep again, I sat down by my wife and tried to talk to her about what's been happening. She told me that she's been worried ever since I started working all the overtime. I told her that we'd talked about how good of an opportunity it was, and she agreed to letting me take on this project. She said it was very suspicious to increase the length of the project. I told her that sometimes that happens. She wanted more evidence, so I showed her messages and emails with timestamps from work and pay stubs showing the OT. She said she believed me and was sorry for doubting me. It was just that Jessie had been telling her that these were all signs that I was cheating. I asked her why she believed Jessie more than me and why she didn't come to me with her concerns. She didn't have a real answer. It's been a couple weeks and the project is over. I actually scaled back and am trying to work a little less than I was before the project so I can spend more time with my wife and daughter. But I feel so burnt out trying to do everything and becoming resentful because in the back of my mind, I know that my wife doesn't trust me. I ask myself, what happens the next time I have a project? Or I have to run errands one day? Or if I have a business trip? Am I going to come back every time to accusations that I'm cheating? I've tried bringing it up a couple times, but my wife tells me it's not the time and that she's tired or sad. I try to be mindful of her feelings, but I wonder if that means that I can never have any of my own. I'm not sure what to do here. Any advice for how I can move forward? Update. Thank you to everyone for all of the advice and support on my previous post. I think a lot of you pointed out what should have been obvious, that I need to get a therapist and start looking after my own mental health. A couple people asked for an update, so I'm giving one, but it's not happy. That night I approached my wife and told her that I was going to find a therapist. I didn't connect it to her accusations or anything, just said that I was having a tough time and needed therapy. She shrugged and told me to do whatever. Next day I got home from work, and our room and my home office were ripped apart. Things everywhere, important papers scattered. I don't see her, but our daughter's in her room crying. My wife left her alone, her cell phone's off. I call my in-laws and a few friends, but no one's seen her. I'm starting to get worried, and I call my mom to see if she can babysit while I go out and look for her. Before my mom can get home, my wife gets back. Jessie's driving. Jessie doesn't come in. She hasn't been back in the house since I kicked her out because she was offended by my behavior, but my wife does. She's clearly upset, been crying. I ask what happened. I thought at first the house might have been robbed. She starts screaming at me that I'm being unfaithful and that the therapy is a front so I can meet my mistress. I try to calm her down and tell her that's not true, but she came at me and she hit me. My nose is broken. She kind of realized what she did and sat down on the couch and went comatose, just stared at the wall. I went into my daughter's room and locked the door. Called my mom to tell her what happened. She was already on her way. And my MIL to ask her to come over and take care of my wife. I packed a bag for my daughter, and when my mom got there, we left. My wife didn't even look up. We dropped my daughter off with my dad and then went to urgent care for my nose. I got blood all over my mom's new Subaru. My daughter and I are staying with my parents for a while, and my wife's staying with hers. I am looking into getting a restraining order against Jessie. My wife and I are separating. I love her, but I won't live with someone who hurts me, and who could potentially hurt our daughter. I am not going forward with a divorce yet, with the hopes that my wife will get the treatment she needs, and we can work things out. My in-laws told me that they're looking at inpatient treatment at a local hospital. But I also have everything well documented in case of an eventual custody battle. My heart's broken because I know this isn't my wife. This is a sickness in her mind. But I need to keep myself and our daughter safe and give her the space to recover. I'm hoping that this is the right decision. Thanks again, everyone. Edit. Thank you all for your feedback. I've talked to my parents after reading your comments and came to the conclusion that for my daughter's protection, I need to file a police report. I am headed to the station now. Update. TLDR. A woman fed lies to my wife, suffering from postpartum depression, that led to a mental breakdown and her death. She now wants to speak at my wife's funeral. Denying her would start trouble, which I'm not sure would be worth it. There's more context for this situation in my post history. My wife passed on early Monday morning. Convinced by her friend Jessie that I was having an affair that I did not have, she had a mental break, which resulted in my taking our infant daughter and staying with my parents for a while. She was with her parents, who planned on taking her to the hospital for inpatient treatment on Monday. On Sunday night, she came to my parents' house and demanded I give her our daughter. Because she had left her alone for several hours the last time she was responsible for her and had gotten physical with me, I refused. I offered to let her come in and spend time with her while my parents and I were present, but she didn't want to come in and wanted to take our daughter with her. She was upset, but left eventually. A few hours later, she drove her parents' car into a tree and died. The friend Jessie came to see my daughter and me yesterday. After some tears, she told me that she was planning to speak at my wife's funeral. She had already cleared it with my in-laws, but was letting me know as a courtesy. I told her she would not be speaking at the funeral. We fought, and she left after telling me that I was an asshole and not the only person who loved my wife. I talked to my in-laws, who are adamant that Jessie be allowed to speak. She and my wife knew each other since they were kids, and my in-laws are close to her. We're all very fragile right now, and I fear that pushing this further would hurt my relationship with my in-laws, which I don't want. Still, the thought of seeing Jessie up there at my wife's funeral makes me feel sick. I don't think I can stand to listen to her, knowing that she took joy in my wife's deteriorating mental health and picked up my wife, leaving my daughter home alone. That being said, I don't trust myself to make the best decisions right now. My mind's clouded by grief, guilt, and fear. My parents are split on what to do, and I don't have the energy to reach out to my friends. So I'm coming here again to ask for your advice. Thank you. Story 8. I am leaving my wife tomorrow, and I couldn't be happier. I, 45M, and my wife, 44F, have been married for 10 years. We dated for 6 years before that, and I got a lot of pressure to get married from my parents, her... Something in my gut said that this wasn't right. I called it cold feet and did my best to ignore it. We got married. Pretty much the moment the ink was dry on our marriage license, things went south. On our honeymoon, she did nothing but complain I hadn't booked a nicer hotel. In the following months, she wanted a new apartment, a new car, gifts, jewelry, handbags. It was never enough. It's like the moment she got the ring, it stopped being about me and became about what I could give her. I am a doctor. I make good money, not good enough to support the kind of lifestyle she wants, though. We don't have sex anymore. We don't laugh. We don't talk about anything but money. We have no kids. She said she wanted them before marriage, then changed her mind. Our home looks like a showroom. There is no warmth or joy or even comfort here. I hate it. I hate her. I am a 45-year-old physician, and I have barely enough savings to sustain us for 3 months. I want to retire someday. I want to enjoy my life. I rented a cool apartment across town in a less desirable neighborhood, and there's a stack of IKEA furniture waiting for me to set it up there. The lease is up on the Mercedes. My wife pushed me to lease next month, and I will be replacing it with a used Prius. I'm starting therapy next week. I have a divorce attorney who has assured me that the prenup we signed before marriage means I won't have to pay alimony. I hope to leave the higher-paying job that my wife insisted I take for something with less hours, sometime in the next year. I'm going to ask out the pretty barista who flirts with me every morning. I'm telling her first thing tomorrow. I'm expecting her to cry and beg and demand we try therapy. I don't want any of that. This was never right, and I'm only sorry it took me so long to realize it. I'm sorry I've wasted so much of my life being married to a woman because I thought it was the right thing. I am so excited. Update. Tried to post separately, but it was taken down. Posted today. First of all, damn. I didn't expect the first post to blow up. I really was getting it off my chest and expected a few good luck comments and not much more. I know a lot of people were asking for an update, so here goes. Usually when I wake up, I go for a run or a bike ride. While I'm gone, my wife gets up, gets dressed, gets a smoothie going. Whatever. This morning I paced the kitchen, rehearsing what I had to tell her over and over again. When she finally came down, I felt oddly calm. I wasn't expecting to be panicked exactly, but apprehensive at least. I told her I needed to speak to her. She gave me an uh-huh and didn't look up from the coffee machine. Then I just came out with it. I told her I was leaving and that I wanted a divorce, that we hadn't been happy in a long time, and I felt as though she didn't care about me or my emotional needs. Pretty much instantly, the gaslighting began. She cried that I never get her flowers anymore, that I don't do enough to support her, that I don't care if she's happy. I brought up the fact that I suggested therapy over a year ago, and she agreed, but then made excuse after excuse not to go. I brought up the times she completely ignored the budget we worked on. I told her how it made me feel when she dismissed me when I tried to tell her how I was feeling. The crying escalated then, along with begging for a chance to make this right, to go to therapy, that she would be better. It went like I thought it would go, and I felt absolutely nothing. I don't care anymore. Whatever I once felt for her is just dead and gone, and she might as well have been a second cousin sobbing about her marriage for all the connection I felt to it. Eventually, I just got fed up and walked out. She has been blowing up my phone with calls and texts which range from angry to begging to threatening. I started getting calls from her mother and mine too, but the end of the day. I spoke briefly to my mother and calmly explained that I was sorry she didn't hear it from me, but my wife was sucking me dry financially and emotionally, and I couldn't do it anymore. She was surprisingly supportive. I'm currently in my new apartment. I unrolled the mattress in a box and went to Walmart for sheets. I ate Thai takeout for dinner at the kitchen counter and watched a bit of Netflix on my computer. I have everything I need for the next few days. My wife is getting served tomorrow. I keep expecting the sadness to set in, but it hasn't. I feel like 1,000 pounds are off my shoulders, and suddenly my future is full of possibilities. I'm going to travel. I'm going to try new restaurants. I'm going to take a job that actually makes me happy and proud instead of rich. Much to the internet's chagrin, I will ask out the barista, because despite unpopular opinion, she is both age-appropriate, it's her family's business, and I do have the interpersonal skills to recognize the difference between customer service and actual connection. Cheers, everyone! I'm going to have a beer and then take a walk around my new neighborhood. Reminder, I am not the original poster. Note, because a lot of people are commenting on asking the barista out thing, I will paste comment OP made about that. All right, folks. I've gotten a lot of comments begging me not to ask out the barista as it's her job to be nice to me. I didn't really get into the relationship I have with her because I didn't think it was relevant to the divorce, but here goes. I met her about a year ago. She's 30. I don't usually wear a wedding ring because my job requires me to scrub regularly. She actually asked me out, invited me to a food truck festival in town, a few months into knowing each other. I said I was married and she was embarrassed. Since then, we've had a bit of a running joke going where she asks me, "So, still married?" My current plan is to reply not for long and see what happens. I appreciate the internet's apprehension. In truth, I would probably say the same thing if I didn't know the backstory, but I promise I'm not a creep. Story 9. My best guy friend just told me he's in love with me, 2 days before my wedding. I've been with my fiancé for 3 years, engaged for a little over a year. My best friend and I have known each other since freshman year of college. We are all in our early 30s. This morning I woke up to a long-ass text from my guy best friend that he had sent around 6 a.m. Basically, it was him pouring his heart out. He said he's been in love with me for years, but always hoped I'd end up breaking up with my fiancé and finally noticing him. He asked me to call off the wedding and run away with him. It said, I needed to tell you before it was too late. I just feel gross and sad. I have no feelings for him beyond platonic love. I've drafted a response and deleted it over and over. I haven't even told my fiancé. I don't want him to have to worry about me so soon to our wedding. I know I need to, but I don't know what to do or how to phrase it. What's worse is that he's become my fiancé's friend too. I'm also pretty pissed that my friend chose such an unfortunate time to cause me such distress. There were so many times over the years he could have just bucked up and told me how he felt. But waiting until right before I'm married? Like I would just cancel my wedding and leave my fiancé because of a goddamn text? I want to tell him to not come to the wedding. I can't trust that he wouldn't try to pull something. I don't even know if I want to talk to him again. But the thought of losing my best friend is heartbreaking. Hell, the thought of not having him at my wedding is really painful. He's put me in an uncomfortable, impossible situation. I wish it wasn't on me to deal with his feelings for him. I wish he had either stopped being friends with me when he realized us ending up together would never happen, or had told me a while ago. I don't want to kick him while he's down, but I need to make it clear that I have no feelings. The wedding is still on, and I don't want him to attend. We have been friends for over a decade. I've been crying over this all day. I feel almost disgusted, knowing that this whole time he had ulterior motives. How do I even go about dealing with this? I'm supposed to get married in under 48 hours. Edit. I'll be showing the text to my fiancé after he gets home from his brother's. I won't send anything until he's here with me. Update. My husband. I love being able to say that now. And I got back from our honeymoon yesterday. I turned on my phone and opened the Reddit app, and it was still signed into this account, so I had an oh yeah moment and figured I'd post an update. So a lot of people here really helped validate the icky mess of feelings I was having. Thank you for that. Posting here really helped put my thoughts into words. So that night my fiancé got home from his brother's. I let him sit down, and then I showed him the text. He read it, and I watched his eyes get bigger and expression angrier. Of course, I started apologizing like an idiot, and he told me I didn't owe him an apology for anything. We talked, and he told me he figured the guy had a crush, but kept it respectful. And really, he had. We were close, but beyond a side hug during greetings and goodbyes, there was no physicality. I even let him read out past messages just to see that there was no emotional affair or me leading him on. I never even vented about my fiancé when we would have arguments because I knew better than to do that. I talked to my mom, LOL. So my fiancé asked me what I wanted to do. And I said that while it did sadden me, I didn't want him at our wedding. I was afraid that he would try some nonsense. We typed up a very brief message. It said, "Friend, I'm sorry that you mistook my friendship for something more. The wedding is going to happen, and it'd be best if you didn't attend." To be clear, I let fiancé read this message, and he stands by my decision to uninvite you. We wanted to make it clear that it was me who wanted him to not come, not just my fiancé. Knowing him, he'd probably claim that fiancé forced me to uninvite him. He read the message and left it on read for a while. I honestly started getting pretty anxious over it, and fiancé asked if I wanted to block him. Part of me wanted to, and part of me wanted to hear him out. And when he finally responded, the text was so long that I had to click on it to read it. It was horrible. He called me a liar for leading him on for over a decade, that he hoped my fiancé left me and that we were infertile. It was just horrible thing after horrible thing, and I started crying. Fiancé took my phone into the other room while I sobbed. I think he called him, but I'm not sure. What I do know is after about an hour he came back in, handed me my phone back and told me that friend was now blocked on everything, would not be attending. And the best man and my maid of honor knew of the situation and would handle it for me. It was like a weight lifted off of my shoulders, honestly. After reading that message, I really wasn't so sad that friend wouldn't be attending anymore. And our wedding fucking rocked. We had the time of our lives, surrounded by people who loved us, and we loved them. It still feels like a dream, to be honest. And if friend tried to show up, I never heard anything of it. I guess that's the update. It's not nearly as dramatic and crazy as what people hoped for, I feel like, but I'm happy. Story 10. My husband's open marriage suggestion backfired on him. Original post. My husband, Leo, 34M, and I, 30F, have been together for 7 years, married for 4 of them. We don't have any kids and we don't intend to. 2 years ago, Leo asked me for an open marriage. I was devastated at the time. I couldn't understand why he didn't just want me. I couldn't even comprehend the idea of sharing him either. He gave me the same song and dance a lot of men give their spouses, swore up and down that he loved me. I just wasn't fulfilling his needs. He needed more than what I could give. It was just to spice up our life. It was just sex, etc., etc. I did ask if there was someone else. He said no. To this day, I'm still not sure if I believed him. But at the time, I was angry and hurt and said no. He pestered me to change my mind for a week before giving me an ultimatum: open marriage or divorce. I chose the open marriage. I just couldn't bear the thought of him leaving me at the time. We have rules. We can't bring any partners home. We have to get tested for STD every 3 months. 1 weekend out of the month must be left free for us time. Any money we spend on with our partners must come from our personal accounts. I didn't partake in the open marriage myself for the first 3 months. Leo obviously did right away. He seemed to be gone or out late almost all the time, but he always acted so happy and loving towards me while I felt like I was dying inside. It killed me to think he was sleeping with other women, and I felt so lonely and unattractive and not good enough. I told my sister, Katie, 26F, and a few close friends everything. Katie told me to just play his game and be part of the open marriage too. If he can sleep around, so could I. I honestly didn't have much confidence in myself at the time. I'm a bit overweight and I've never considered myself conventionally pretty. I was afraid this would just humiliate me further. Katie and my best friend Jessie, 30F, set up my online dating profiles for me. I got so many matches that it was overwhelming. When I told Leo, he was surprised, but told me to do whatever I thought was best. Jessie helped me choose my first date, and I actually had a great time. He didn't pressure me for sex and took me out to drinks and dinner. We did have sex eventually, but it was all just casual, and we didn't see each other after a couple months of casual dating. That first guy really made me feel more confident in myself. So I kept going on dates with men. A lot of them wanted to treat me, so I didn't have to spend much of my own money. Not only that, but some of the men have given me the best sex I've ever had in my life. Almost like the kind of sex you read in romance novels. It's been amazing. I am currently seeing 2 different men, alongside Leo. One, Mark, 38M, is more of a steady boyfriend I've been with for about 6 months, and the one, Stephen, 25M, is very casual, mostly just hanging out and sex. They know about my open marriage, other relationships, and are fine with it. My husband has not been so lucky. In the beginning, he definitely was. He was always out and about and didn't seem to care even when I started dating, too. But now he just complains a lot and hasn't been going out much. He whines about how he's usually the one spending money. A lot of the women he tries to be with want an emotional connection before sex. He often wants to be with younger women, but they want younger men. He's also been upset that I go out with random guys so often while he's at home alone all the time. He hasn't asked to close the marriage yet, but I feel like he will soon. He keeps saying he misses us and wants to spend more time together. He tried to initiate sex a lot more too. He wants to go on dates and go on vacations and all that stuff more and more, and he gets upset when I tell him I can't because I've already scheduled to do stuff with my partners, mostly Mark. Honestly, I don't think I love Leo anymore. I care about him, but I just don't love him. I'm not saying I love Mark or Steven, but I honestly feel closer to Mark nowadays than I do Leo. Mark makes me feel comfortable and safe, and I love spending time with him more than my own husband. Steven is funny and sweet and really good at sex. Katie and Jesse have been wanting me to divorce for a year now, but I was afraid of hurting him and thought I still loved him. But I think my love for him died when he asked for this open marriage in the first place. Seeing him get all pissy about it now just because he's not benefiting from it is also a turnoff for me too. But I don't know if divorce is the best option. I still care about him and I still don't want to hurt him. Maybe if he finally asked to close the marriage, we can talk about it then. Update #1. Hi everyone! I got so many comments and messages on my last post, which got deleted for some reason, that I was a bit overwhelmed, especially when a lot of you kept saying the same thing. Divorce, divorce, divorce. But the thing is, I think a part of me does still loves my husband. I know in my last post that I didn't think I loved him anymore, but I can't just forget about the things that I do love. I love when he sings in the shower. I love when he laughs so hard he snorts. I love when he kisses my forehead when I've had a bad day. I love when he holds my hand when we watch TV together. Leo has done a lot of shitty things, but he really isn't the big asshole people think. Maybe that was my fault. But even if I do still love him, I'm not in love with him anymore. I don't think I have been for a while. I care about him. A part of me does still love him. But you all were right. I should have just divorced him when he gave me that ultimatum in the first place. This past Saturday we had the big talk. I initiated it, but he didn't seem too surprised. I just told him that I noticed he didn't seem to like me going out with Mark or Steven and asked if there was a problem. He said there was. But he didn't ask me to close the marriage. He just asked me if I still loved him. I said something like, "Not like I used to." He broke down crying, which made me cry. I guess he had known for a while that I wasn't in love anymore. But he had hoped he could win me back if he funneled all of his energy into me. I was honest, and told him that during those first 3 months of our open marriage, I think my love for him died, and I just couldn't get it back. I did tell him that I still cared about him, and that I did love him, but it's not the same as it was. He asked if I loved Mark or Steven, and I said no. I like being with them, and I care about them a lot, but I can't say I'm in love with either of them. I also finally asked him why he wanted the open marriage in the first place. A lot of you in the comments said he already had someone lined up, and you were right. He had someone at work he was interested in, and she wanted him too. The open marriage was just to get permission. He honestly never expected me to also get my own partners because of how unconfident I was, but he didn't want to stop me either because he thought nothing would come of it. He didn't really like me seeing other men, but he knew it wouldn't have been fair to tell me no when I gave him permission first. I guess Mark and Steven made him insecure because I was spending so much time with them on a regular basis. The open marriage was just sex on the side for him. He only did hookups, and they never lasted long. He genuinely always just loved only me. But he thought I was falling in love with my partners, and he was losing me and wanted to win me back. We cried a lot and talked a lot. We've decided to get a divorce. Since the house is in his name, I'm going to move out and live with Katie for a while. He told me I didn't have to and I could stay until the divorce was finalized, but I just can't. It's too hard to even look at him sometimes. I don't know how I feel, to be honest. I thought I would be relieved or sad, but I'm just tired. I wish I could have been like you all wanted me to be, clapping back or being sarcastic and snarky or rubbing it in his face. But I don't feel like I've won anything. I just feel lost. Update #2. Hey, it's been a while. It feels like both lot and nothing has happened. I still have a lot of feelings, but I'm also just really tired. Leo and I are still in the middle of our divorce. It's been as amicable as a divorce can be. Since we mutually agreed to it and we had prenup, it's been pretty easy splitting everything else 50-50ths. My lawyer says I should be divorced by the end of the year. Leo is insistent on giving me alimony, but I'm not really interested. Thanks to a lot of people making me think about Leo's explanation for the open marriage, I did approach him about it again and asked him to be 100% honest with me about that girl from work. He admitted there was more to it than he admitted. This is what he explained to me, and I have decided to believe him. Even if he's lying, it doesn't really matter anymore since we're getting divorced. I also just have little energy to care about the details at this point. According to him, this is the timeline. He was posting on Reddit about his kinks for advice and such, which I did know about beforehand. He was getting messages from this one user and they just kept talking back and forth. He mentions my name to the user in a conversation, which he let me read. During his lunch break, his coworker, I'll call her Mary, approaches him and asks if he uses Reddit and asks about his handle. He confirms, and then Mary tells her he's the user he's been talking to. They start talking more and more in real life as friends, and eventually start talking through IG. He also showed me these conversations. The conversations were mostly just memes and jokes, with occasional flirts, mentioning of kinks. At one point, she says it's too bad he's not single. This is when he decided to demand the open marriage, because Mary was clearly into him and into the same kinks, and she could sexually satisfy him since I was unable to. That's how he basically said it anyway. Truth be told, we did have some bed difficulties before the open marriage was brought up. I'm very vanilla, and he discovered his kinks after we were married. I tried them all for him, but I just couldn't get into it and he didn't like seeing me struggle. So he didn't try to bring them into the bedroom again after it was obvious I didn't like it. So we did have sexual compatibility issues. Maybe we were doomed to fail, even without the open marriage ultimatum. Our families, outside of my sister, were shocked when we told everyone we were getting a divorce. They always thought we were so happy and in love. My mom blames me, which I expected, but it still hurts. They don't know about the open marriage, and Leo and I plan to keep it that way. I think he is ashamed to tell them. I am too, if I'm being honest. I really thought Leo was the love on my life. He was my first for almost everything. I said we were together for 7 years, but we were friends since college. I've known him for nearly 12 years, and we're about to become strangers soon. I still mourn my marriage, even though Katie and Jesse keep telling me this is for the best. They're both definitely thrilled. They don't hide it. But they also know this has been a weird time for me. I just don't know how to feel. I thought I would feel free or relieved or heartbroken or something, but I just feel weird. Like I lost a part of myself and I don't know how to get it back. I'm still living with Katie, but I'll be moving out soon. I found a 1-bedroom apartment that's near Jesse, so I won't be completely alone. Mark offered to let me move in with him, but I declined. Honestly, we're kind of on standby. He knows I'm having a hard time processing my feelings about my husband and the end of my marriage. I think he wants us to be official, but I don't know. I really do like Mark and I don't want to lose him, but I feel like I need to figure myself out first. As for Stephen, we ended our relationship at the beginning of August. He got a job offer in another state and took it. Even though it was casual, I did cry a little. Stephen is a great guy. Whenever he does decide to settle down into something serious, the woman who gets him will be a lucky one. We've been texting here and there, but it's mostly just sending each other TikToks and polite, hope you're doing well messages. Some people asked me if I wanted to go back to monogamy, even after experimenting and clearly getting into this poly relationship I had going on. And the answer is yes, I do. Even though Mark and Stephen were great and I met plenty of great guys during my open marriage, I don't know if I've really been happy with myself or my choices. I also think I felt guilty a lot too, like I was somehow cheating on Leo, Mark, and Stephen, even though it was all consensual. Polyamory and open relationships may work for some people, but it's really just not for me. Jesse says I need to get a therapist. I have tried looking, but finding a therapist that's both available and seems like a good fit is a pain. Hopefully I can find one by the time the divorce is settled. I also want to figure out what to do about Mark on my own. I don't want to lead him on and give him false hope. Maybe we should take a break, or maybe I should tell him to just break up with me. He should find his own happiness without worrying about me. Update #3. Hey everyone. Hope you all had happy holidays and a good new year. This post is just sort of a rambling update. It was honestly thanks to you internet strangers, on top of Katie and Jesse and my therapist, that I'm doing much better than I had been last year. So I felt I owed you all a life update. Firstly, it's official. Leo and I are divorced. It was finalized earlier this week. To be honest, when I realized it was finally over, I cried. But it wasn't a sad morning cry like I had been doing when I first posted to Reddit. It was mainly out of relief. Relief that it was over and relief that I could actually put everything all behind me. Some of you will be happy to know that I did take the alimony Leo offered. It's honestly not too much, but it'll help me maintain some extra expenses. To be honest, I think he mainly offered to appease his guilt after everything that happened. Whatever his reasons are, they're not my concern anymore. I do have a therapist now. She's wonderful and is helping me work through a lot of untangled childhood trauma that ended up having an effect on my marriage. Honestly, if it wasn't for my mom, I don't think I would have ever agreed to the open marriage in the first place. A lot of people speculated that it was Leo that ruined my self-esteem, but it was always my mother. My therapist is helping me come to understand that my mom is and probably always will be a toxic individual. I'm trying to work on my boundaries and slowly limiting my contact with her. It's hard, but I'm trying. As for Leo, my therapist advised me to close the door on him. He originally wanted us to be friends. Despite the progress I've made, he still has an effect on me. Many of his messages were him trying to persuade me to give him another chance, or him promising to be the husband I deserve. My therapist said I needed to be firm with my boundaries, and sometimes the best way to be firm to draw a hard line. So I asked him not to contact me for a few months while I sorted myself out. So far, he's complied for the most part. He still follows me on Instagram, and we're still FB friends, but he never comments on any of my posts or messages me on my stories. Sometimes he'll like something, but that's the extent of our contact, which I can handle. I have also made sure to keep myself from checking up on him, per the advice of my therapist, because I don't want to obsess over him and the what-ifs. Even after everything, I don't hate him. I thought I needed to, because everyone else seemed to for what he did. My therapist explained that it's easier to hate someone you don't know than someone you do, because I have so many wonderful and cherished memories that I can't fully separate from the painful memories he left with me. So I don't hate him. I don't even think him to be a bad person. He's selfish and self-centered, and he hurt me a lot. But he can also funny and sweet and attentive, and that was why I fell in love with him in the first place. I'm still seeing Mark. I had tried telling him we should break up because of my weird headspace, and I thought he deserved better. But he said he loved me and wanted to wait for me, and promised to go at my pace for however long I needed. I want to believe him when he says that, and I love being with him, so I'm cautiously optimistic about it all working out. We still don't live together, and I kind of like it that way for now. I'm learning to become my own person again. Leo had been in my life for so long that I forgot what it was like to just be me, and not me and Leo. I even got a dog, which I always wanted but never got one because Leo was allergic. His name is Iro, and thanks to him I don't feel lonely. This will probably be my last update. I really just wanted to say thank you all for your kind words and support on all my posts. It really meant a lot to me. So, thank you and have a great new year. Top comments. Commenter 1. Congratulations and condolences seem oddly appropriate. You're embarking on a new phase in your life. It sounds like you're unpacking a lot and doing great at it. Wishing you a wonderful future and peace. Commenter 2. Your progress is amazing. Taking steps to limit contact with toxic people and focusing on therapy is so important. You deserve the happiness you're building. Commenter 3. Please update us one more time to let us know what happens with Mark. I hope he turns out as great as he seems. You definitely deserve someone great, and I'm sure you will have no trouble finding that person whether it's Mark or not. But I'm definitely rooting for you and Mark. Story 11. I caught my fiancé hooking up with my sister while I'm pregnant, and tomorrow I'm exposing everything at our family gathering. I found out I am pregnant and everything fell apart. January 6, 2025. I never expected life to look like this. 2 years ago, I was in a different mindset. I was focused on little things. Back then, I felt so comfortable in the day-to-day routine that I overlooked how fragile my future really was. He and I met about 3 years ago. At first, I was not ready for anything too serious. I already had my daughter and was juggling everything alone. But little by little, I let my guard down. He seemed so patient and steady, helping me with my little one without having any children of his own. I fell for him slowly, Then, all at once, trusting that I was finally building the loving family I dreamed of. He encouraged me to stop using protection and birth control, which led to this pregnancy. For example, he would often say things like, "We should think about having a child someday," even saying he considers my daughter as his own, and gradually we reduced our use of birth control methods. This pressure made me hopeful about expanding our family, but now I realize that he wasn't genuinely ready or honest about his intentions. His sudden withdrawal has left me feeling manipulated and unprepared for this situation. That was before last month. That was before the positive pregnancy test. When I saw the result, I felt a wave of panic and excitement. I wanted to believe he would stand by me, even be happy about the chance to add another piece to our family. But he did not seem happy. He grew silent. He told me he was not actually ready for another child. He was worried about money and our future. He said maybe we should think about other options. Hearing that felt like a punch in the chest. Now our entire routine is off balance. We barely talk. My daughter has noticed and keeps asking why he is suddenly so sad or quiet. I try to stay calm for her, but my mind is spinning. One moment I am crocheting while she colors, and I glance at him hoping for some sign of warmth, but nothing. He looks away or changes rooms, leaves the house without explaining. The next minute I feel tears spill out. I remember how alone I felt raising my daughter by myself until he came along. Am I back to that? Will I have to do it alone again, only this time with 2 children? I love him, but his distance hurts me more than I can express. The shock of it is unreal. He was the one who used to laugh with me. He used to place a gentle hand on my daughter's shoulder when she learned new things for the first time and teaching her. That sweet, playful version of him seems to have vanished overnight. I am stuck not only fearing the practical details of a new baby, but also grieving the deep sense of safety I once had with him. I keep replaying the moment he told me he did not want another child. I feel betrayed, embarrassed, lonely, and so sad. I do not know how to move forward. He rarely shares what is going on in his head. All I see is a giant wall between us, which might be permanent or might come down only if he decides he wants to let it. I do not have grand answers, just confusion and an endless swirl of questions. My daughter is the light of my life, and I feel guilty for letting my sadness leak into her world. But how do I pretend everything is fine when it is not? How do I plan for a new child when the father is suddenly distant? It is like the ground beneath me is crumbling, and I do not have a safe place to stand. It helps a little to write it all down. Maybe someone will understand. Maybe it will remind someone else they are not alone. Right now I am just hurting, missing a version of my life that I thought was guaranteed. If you made it here, thanks for reading. I hope that one day I can share a better update with you. Until then, I am just trying to get through the day without letting the heartbreak swallow me whole. Original post, January 13th, 2025, 1 week later. I have reached the edge of what I can bear. I am 28 and have been with my fiancé for just over 3 years. We live together with my 4-year-old daughter from a previous relationship. 3 weeks ago, I found out I am pregnant again. At first I was overjoyed, naive enough to think we were finally creating the stable family I had always wanted. He grew distant the very next day. He ignored my excitement, started coming home late, and kept his phone glued to him at all times. I began noticing strange calls and those discreet social media notifications that vanished too quickly. My gut told me to investigate. I almost wish I had not. He has been secretly hooking up with my older sister behind my back. She was the one I always tolerated, even though she drags drama wherever she goes. She would hug me when relatives were around, pretend to be the supportive older sibling, then turn around and badmouth me to her friends. I never imagined she would crawl into my life this deeply. It felt like a slap in the face to read their messages calling me clueless for not noticing. He told her about the pregnancy before he was honest with me about his doubts, and they joked about how stressed I would be raising another child. My sister bragged that our entire family thinks she is the more interesting and more popular sibling. Meanwhile, I am just the quiet one who apparently deserves this. I do not know if they are still meeting in secret or if they just get a kick out of hurting me. My fiancé denies everything whenever I confront him, says I am hormonal, that my imagination is running wild. My sister keeps messaging me, telling me I should keep my mouth shut and stop being dramatic. I am done hiding my anger. My mother wants me to talk it out calmly, but how do I fix something so broken I can barely breathe? My fiancé thinks I will just accept this. He is counting on me being too shy or too pregnant to do anything. Tomorrow, I plan to blow this up in front of the entire family. We are supposed to have a casual get-together at our parents' house, ironically to celebrate my pregnancy announcement. I will gather my phone logs, the screenshots, and all those humiliating texts they sent each other. Once all the relatives have settled in, I will put everything on display. No more secrets. I might burn everything in the process. I might lose any chance of a pleasant co-parenting scenario. But I feel like I have no other way to reclaim my dignity. I have been crying nonstop for days. My nerves are shot, and all I get from my fiancé is either silent treatment or insults. My sister taunts me and acts like I am worthless. I see no reason to protect them anymore. I do not know what happens next. Maybe they will run off together. Maybe they will lie or twist things around to make me look insane. My fiancé has not contributed much financially, so I worry about affording my daughter and this potential new baby on my own. Yet I cannot pretend everything is normal. I have to protect whatever self-respect I have left. I am going to set my entire world on fire tomorrow. Part of me feels terrified. The other part is numb. Regardless, I am done letting them tiptoe around my heart. If they want my silence, they should have kept their betrayal better hidden. Let everyone see exactly who they are. That is all I have left. Update January 15th, 2025, 2 days later. I am still reeling from what happened. After writing my last post, I spent hours debating with myself about whether I should really go through with exposing them at our family gathering. A part of me was scared I would turn my whole life upside down forever. But I knew I couldn't keep letting them walk all over me while pretending everything was fine. I called my mom beforehand to let her know I was breaking up with him and to prepare her. When I arrived at my parents' house, everyone was already there, including my ex-fiancé and my sister. My mother tried to pull me aside, whispering that we should talk first. I stayed calm, walked straight into the living room where everyone was sitting, and asked them to listen. They looked confused. My sister immediately rolled her eyes, and my fiancé mumbled something, probably hoping I would stay silent. I started reading the most shocking parts of the messages I found between the two of them. They mocked me, joked about me not noticing anything, and said I deserved this. I had timestamps proving he was sneaking around with my own sister while I was at home with my daughter. My sister stood up and accused me of lying, her voice defensive and low-pitched. But I just kept reading. The messages spoke for themselves. I revealed how he told her about my pregnancy before even discussing it with me, and how they laughed about me being stressed raising another child. My fiancé tried to dismiss me, claiming I was overreacting and misinterpreting the situation because of my emotional pregnant state. He even blamed my mental health. By then, he stormed out of the room and my sister started crying. My dad stared at the floor, silent, while my mother looked horrified. Finally, my sister snapped and stormed out, yelling that I was a dramatic liar who blew everything out of proportion. Now the fallout begins. My fiancé, or rather my ex-fiancé, has been texting me nonstop. One moment he says he is sorry, the next he blames me for humiliating him. He shows zero genuine remorse. He is just mad that I exposed him. My sister calls me horrendous names, says I ruined her image and refuses to take responsibility. She insists I am making up drama. Honestly, I do not even know if they are still seeing each other or blaming each other for being caught. Either way, their secret is out, and that is all I wanted. I am now talking to a lawyer because this man barely contributed financially before. I have to protect my daughter and ensure I never have a child with him. Only the thought of raising 2 kids alone is terrifying. I feel numb and heartbroken at times, but I also feel a strange sense of relief. At least everyone knows the truth now. I exposed everything that day in the living room, but at least I am no longer being trampled on in silence. My sister and ex-fiancé can no longer laugh behind my back. Yes, things will probably get messy. They might lie to other relatives, people we mutually know, or twist the story. But I am glad I refused to keep quiet. All I can do now is focus on the positive, talk to my lawyer, and move forward. It will be painful, but I will do everything in my power to build a new future on my own terms, far away from these people. Top comments. Commenter 1. Good for you. The new journey ahead will be less toxic, and the betrayers will have to deal with themselves. Best of luck to you. Commenter 2. I'm proud of you for going through with it. They hurt you, intentionally. You owe them absolutely nothing. Anyone in your friend or family group who doesn't see it can fuck all the way off. Such an ultimate betrayal. You deserve peace and love and respect and safety. You'll find it. Keep going, OP. Commenter 3. Are you still early enough, in a safe place, to think about abortion? I only ask because you are already stressed at the idea of being a single mom of 2, and that you'll be forever tied to the ex, who will more than likely take the kid around your sister, poison them against you. Not that it's an easy decision, but it might be the best one to take for your mental health and ability to cut ties quickly. Story 12. Wife, 41F, recently reconnected with an old friend, 44M, and spending a lot of time with them. How do I handle this appropriately? Original post, November 29th, 2024. To set the scene, my wife, 41F, and I, 40M, have been together for 15 years and have a child together, 5F. Before we met, she was friends with KC, 44M, whom she also had occasional sex. She cheated with him on her last boyfriend before the relationship was over, something she mentioned once and forgotten since that she mentioned it to me. The reason she ended their friendship was because the last time they had sex, he didn't pull out, and she had to take Plan B. She was mad at him for that and decided to cut him out of her life. That was fairly recently before we met, and when she and I started dating, she was still in the process of clarifying to him that she didn't want anything to do with him anymore. Q2 now, she recently reconnected with him via another friend, and they have been spending an unusual amount of time together. Her friend pulled her into some sort of crypto thing and is currently teaching her and a couple of other friends everything about crypto investments. She wants to learn everything about crypto investing and is attending his boot camps. But in addition to that, she also hangs out with him taking walks and just being on the phone with him. I made it clear pretty early that I find it a bit weird that going from I don't want to see him anymore, and after 15 years suddenly spending so much time with him. 0. 100 right quick. She doesn't hide him, though. She tells me when she hangs out with him or sees him and has so far been open about their interactions. He has 3 kids and is married. It came to a head today when she announced she was going to go out with him again, after last weekend where she said she'd be going for a walk with him at night for an hour, and ended up spending at least 4 hours with him, taking a walk and losing track of time. I told her in no unclear terms that she is a grown woman, but that the intensity of their contact is worrying and making me uncomfortable, and that if I felt that this relationship became appropriate, I would end things with her at the drop of a hat. She knows I have been cheated on in the past, and that I have a zero-tolerance policy towards cheating and cheaters. I despise it, and have never done it myself. She's upset now and currently outside in front of our house door talking on the phone. I assume she's talking to him. Meanwhile, I'm looking after our daughter and her friend. Telda Dr. Wife reconnected with an old friend and is spending an inappropriate amount of time with him. And I am getting really uncomfortable with it, but don't want to overreact. Update 4 hours later. From comment, not sure how I am allowed to participate in this conversation, such arbitrary rules on this sub, but we just had another argument before she walked out to meet with him. She put our daughter to bed, and before she left the house, she wanted to talk, defended him and their friendship, and asked why I didn't have a problem with her other exes. I've met 2 of them, and they're both stand-up guys, and she does hang out with them occasionally, but I'm not worried about them. I told her this is different, that context matters, and that I really don't understand why she thinks it's appropriate or even acceptable to meet with a former FWB and spend so much time with them. I brought up that she cheated with him, to which she corrected me that it was someone else who she cheated with on her last boyfriend, some guy with a similar name, whatever, and that they only had sex in between relationships. And then she stated that they talked it out what happened between them with the unprotected sex, but that I wasn't willing to hear it, because I told her I don't want to hear anything about the guy as I don't like him. To this I got pretty angry, asking her if she is really discussing past sexual encounters. She said, yeah, it had to be talked out. We went in a few circles after, but basically it was the same stuff. I don't think it's appropriate. I am not comfortable with the intensity of their friendship, and that the moment I feel she's not being truthful, I am walking out. Also reiterated my point that she's a grown-ass woman and can do what she wants, but she isn't free of the consequences of her actions. In the end, she stood there with tears in her eyes and a look of contempt I've seen before when she's about to lose her shit, but kept her cool and said she's going off to see him. Tried to kiss me goodbye, and I told her no. She then walked towards the door, ranting about me being unreasonable, and I told her again that she's a grown-ass woman, and that she can do as she pleases, but that she needs to be ready for the consequences of her actions. Slammed the door shut and drove off. I guess we'll see what happens when she comes back. Update. Still get DMs here and there, so I thought I'd give everyone some closure on this. Nothing too exciting. TLDR wife reconnected with an old friend and is spending a ton of time with him. We fought. Shit's weird now. So after she ran off to meet him at some bar, she came home around midnight. I was still up as I was watching something on TV, looked over at her, and she looked unsure. She sat down at the end of the couch where I was sitting and said she's sorry she got so angry. She met with him and they talked about the situation. Apparently, he told her that I am right and that it is weird they're spending so much time with each other. And she called a few friends to talk and get their opinion. They mirrored the same sentiments, that it's hard not to think of this as having at least an emotional affair. To be honest, I was still beyond pissed. And to hear that she only came to realize it when other people told her it was inappropriate, not just me, wasn't helping. She explained that she is learning something from him that is giving her a new lease on life and to her. It's like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to finally start contributing financially and acquiring the skills to generate a bigger income. He is apparently a quite successful day trader and has been teaching her and a group of other people how to day trade in extreme detail. She insisted she show me what she was doing, so I let her chew my ear off for an hour about day trading, looking at her programs, charts, indicators, and all that, ranting about financial markets, etc. She's learned trading with leverage and stuff I have no clue about, but it amazes me that a woman who is too ADHD to read boring government forms and gets overwhelmed with simple adult stuff, like communicating with municipalities or banks, and hates math, is diving headfirst into something as complex as crypto day trading. Still, she seemed surprisingly knowledgeable about all this, and knowing how long it takes her to grasp things she's not interested in, I was impressed. And she was still defiant about the whole spending inappropriate amount of time stuff. I told her she needs to cool it with the contact, but I won't stand in her way learning something that she feels is a major opportunity for her. We agreed on ground rules. No evenings or weekends, no phone calls past 6 p.m., and no one-on-one meetings, only group settings. She's been stretching these rules every now and then, but largely kept to them. When she needed to bend them, she speaks to me beforehand and gives me ample of heads up, but hides her resentment of having to follow these rules. Still, she seems to want to keep the peace for now and is being proactive. Things have cooled down to a degree where I don't get angry anymore anytime she mentions him. Anyway, other than that, she now thinks she's a pro and a future millionaire and constantly talks about trading. It's been bumpy for other reasons outside of this weird friendship. Her trading talk is annoying as shit, and I still think she's got a little crush on her big trader hero. I have grown a bit distant in the last couple months because this whole situation emotionally drained me, but we are keeping things going. I know this is not the dramatic cheating and infidelity story some people were expecting. It's a pretty severe rough patch in an average normal people relationship. She's not cheating on me physically, I think. She might have a crush, which happens in a long-term relationship. And I have other shit to deal with at the moment that I just can't expend the energy to obsess over this every day for hours or fight this into a dramatic my way or the highway conclusion. I don't want to blow our marriage up just to satisfy other people's personal convictions on how a relationship should be like. It's shit right now, but it's our shit. My instinct tells me it's a passing fancy, and if things go sideways still, I can always walk out. This will be my last and only update. Story 13. Eta for not supporting my wife's decision to punish our son and letting him go to a party that will be tonight. Original post. This is a throwaway. But this involves some absolute high school drama nonsense that someone my age should have to deal with. But maybe I am trippin' and missing something. So, here I am. I, 45M, share a daughter, 17F, and son, 15M, with my wife, 41F. My wife's best friend, 40F, has two daughters, 18F and 15F. My wife's best friend moved to our town about 6 years. My wife and her best friend have been not so subtly pulling for the two 15-year-olds to end up together. I find this weird and low-key creepy. About 2 years ago, wife's BF's youngest daughter appeared to have developed a crush on our son. My son talked to me about it, and he had zero interest. So, we discussed how to tactfully but firmly let her down. She has approached him again a number of times over the last couple of years, and he has reaffirmed his lack of interest. This past summer, my wife's BF's oldest daughter turned 18. Her parents went all out for her birthday. It was a whole weekend of festivities and events. One of the events was a couples dinner for the oldest daughter and all her friends in couples. The younger daughter of wife's BF wanted to go to the dinner, but did not have anyone to go with. She asked my son, and he agreed to go, but only as friends and just this one time. So they went together. After the dinner, the couples all watched 10 Things I Hate About You together. It was my son's first time seeing it, and he commented that he thought the Heath Ledger singing scene was cool. This is important later. My business partner, 44M, every year for the last 5 years, throws a huge Halloween party. All our employees are invited along with close friends and family. The party requires a costume, and at this party, there are prizes for best individual costume, group costume, and couples costume. My wife's BF and her family are obviously invited every year. This year, the Halloween party is tonight, October 26th. So, let me get to the reason I am here. About a month ago, my son is at school, and comes towards him is my wife's BF's younger daughter with a whole song and dance routine. She ends it by asking him to be her date for the Halloween party. My son was so frustrated and reiterated, for everyone to hear, that he is not interested in her like that at all. Of course, it being high school, some kids laughed and she ran off crying. She has been bullied pretty badly because of it. My wife's BF is livid and thinks our son owes her daughter an apology. My wife agrees and thinks at a minimum he needs to defend her against the bullying. My son has said that for 2 years he has told her he is not interested and reiterated it over and over. At this point, he thinks it's kind of harassing to him, and it is not his role to defend her harassment of him. I agree with my son. My wife and I have had a number of disagreements about it since it happened. Well, things have intensified in the last couple of weeks or so, because another girl, who wife's BF's daughter apparently does not like, asked our son to be her date for the party, and he agreed. They are doing a pretty dope couple's costume. This has really pissed off my wife because she thinks he should at least not go to the party with another girl out of respect. I think that is ridiculous. I plan on driving them to the party with me. My wife now does not want to go to the party and is saying I am an AH and raising our son to be one. So, Eta, first update. Given the events of the past couple of weeks, I thought I would give an update. My wife did not come to the Halloween party. I took my son and his friend, and they had a great time. Unfortunately, only came in fourth in the couple's costume voting. After the party, tensions with my wife died down considerable. She still felt what I did was wrong, but she took a what is done attitude. The bullying at school has gotten more intense. Apparently, my wife's best friend's daughter confronted the girl who my son did take to the Halloween party. That escalated the bullying from other girls, and 2 factions have formed among the girls in 2 grades over this, and it has gotten out of hand. Apparently, some accusations have been thrown around about cheating at my son by various girls. My son has been unbothered because all his truly good friends know the truth. Last Friday, we got a call from the school wanting to meet with us about the situation since my son was the source, their words, not mine, of the issues. We met with some of the administration and one of the teachers on Tuesday. They wanted my son to help the situation by defending my wife's best friend's daughter to their classmates. He refused and talked extensively about her harassing behavior over the past 2 years. They pushed against his description of her conduct, but we ended the meeting with my son promising to provide a list of her harassment over the past 2 years. Tuesday evening, my son prepared the list and showed his mother and I. When my wife saw the list, it was like scales fell from her eyes. She got pretty emotional, apologized to our son, apologized to me, and we had a good group hug. She is now 100% on our side. She asked our son if she could share the list with her best friend. My son agreed. My wife's best friend's response was to double down. My wife is going low contact for the time being. On Wednesday, we took the list to the school. It is a private school and has a strict code of conduct for students in and out of school. So there is a possibility best friend's daughter may have some type of punishment for her behavior. I took my son out of school for the day and we hung out all day, just dropped him back off at school today. So this is the update. Edit. I wanted to add something I said in the comments. My mom for years was a counselor. One thing she taught me is that repentance and forgiveness are not events, but processes. Also that in order for a relationship to be restored, there must first be repentance from the wrongdoer. In light of that, a practice she had our family do was to write letters when one of us caused harm to another. The letter includes, in detail, 1. The wrong the person has committed. 2. The resulting harm that was done. 3. The immediate actions that will be taken to mitigate the harm. And 4. The long-term actions being taken to mitigate the harm ensure the action is not repeated. My wife is currently working on her letter. The person who receives the letter can respond and request that additional actions be taken to address the harm done. My wife knows she is only at the beginning of the process and that it is going to take time. Final update. This will be the final update. After everything that went on with the school last semester, my wife's best friend decided to remove her from school, and she is now going to the local public school. But a week ago, my son received an email from the daughter apologizing for everything that occurred last semester and asking for them to remain friends. Apparently, her dad finally set her down and explained how everything she did would look from a guy's perspective. My son wrote back and said while he accepted the apology, he thinks it is best that he keep his distance. He wished her luck at the new school. My wife's best friend still insists that my son should apologize to her daughter. My wife has said in no uncertain terms that shit isn't happening. A few more kids were disciplined by the school since my last post, but things have calmed down on that front. We are doing family counseling and it has been going well, that is all. This is the final update. Top comments. Commenter 1. The sad thing is, if it was OP's son harassing the wife's friend's daughter, then things probably wouldn't have gotten as far as they did without the police getting involved. I'm glad OP's wife and the wife's, now former friend's husband, ended up siding with OP's son and explained to the daughter how and why her behavior was inappropriate. At least she learned her lesson, unlike her mother. Commenter 2. Wife's friend knew deep down that the situation was out of hand, but doesn't have the wherewithal to come back down to reality, let alone apologize. I think she's the real villain of the story. She influences the child and doubled down at every opportunity. Commenter 3. Your son has been a champion through this whole thing, as have you. I'm glad your wife has come around, even to the point of shutting down her friend, who still doesn't get it. I hope there's no more drama coming your way. Commenter 4. Wow. This is a perfect example on how harassment of a male is ignored, swept under the rug or downplayed. You believed, sided, and supported your son, and it's refreshing to see that happen. Kudos to you, Dad. Your son wished this girl well and said he wishes no more contact with her, and that's it. Tell your wife that the girl is an obsessed stalker. Yes, she is a stalker. Remind your wife that you never engage in a stalker because it only encourages that crazy behavior. Also remind her that your son cut ties with this girl, and that's the end of that. He owes her no apology, and if she insists, it might be time to have a deep discussion with your wife and how she should be protecting your son and not worried about the feelings of a mother-daughter nutjob duo. Story 14. My best friend wants me to break up with my boyfriend, and I don't know why. Original post, January 9th, 2025. My boyfriend, we'll call him Blake, 25M, and I, 25F, have been together for 3 years. Before we dated, we used to be co-workers at a retail store when we were both 17. The first thing I noticed about Blake when we met was that he never smiled or showed any emotion. He always had a serious, stoned look on his face. He hardly, if ever, showed any emotional sentiments. I don't know how to describe it accurately, but just imagine Eminem or Shadow from Sonic and how they both always have a serious look on their faces. That's how Blake is. Even when customers or our co-workers would try to joke with him, he never cracked a smile or laughed, which would make it awkward for them. However, Blake has always been respectful to those around him and never once raised his voice throughout his whole career. Our co-workers always thought Blake was weird and warned me to avoid him. However, despite all that, Blake and I ended up getting along great and became good friends. I never really minded that he never showed any emotions and still thought he was a good person. He even put up with my loud, extroverted self, LOL. Over the years, Blake and I became close, and I would occasionally see him smile or laugh, which I would lightly tease him about when it did happen. On my 22nd birthday, which is on Valentine's, Blake had asked me to come over to his house and said it was serious. And when I got there, it was full of decorations and flowers, and Blake was dressed nicely. He gave a long speech about how much our friendship meant to him, and that he was grateful he had met me and asked if I wanted to be his girlfriend. I swear it felt like I was in a 70s rom-com movie. It was the first time I had seen Blake so vulnerable. He still had his cute, serious, stone face on him, but I could tell he was extremely nervous. I, of course, said yes, and we had been a happy couple since then. Now on to the issue. My best friend, let's call her Sarah, 26F, and I have been friends since we were in 5th grade. Sarah and I were each other's partners in crime. She and I were really close before I met Blake. She had never met Blake before, as at the time he and I were just barely talking, and by the time we graduated high school, she had moved away to stay with her dad in another city, so she never got the chance to meet him. I, of course, talked about him and showed pictures of him and me together when we became closer and started dating. However, she once stated how she found it weird that he never was really smiling or seemed happy when he was with me, and that I shouldn't be dating someone who doesn't want to be happy around me. I brushed it off and just assured him that's how he is, and that he is actually a sweet guy. Looking back, I probably shouldn't have looked past what she said, but at that time I thought she was just being a protective friend. She had recently come back to our city and wanted the 3 of us to meet together. We decided to meet at a restaurant her and I used to hang out at. When we got there, Sarah and I ran at each other and squealed like little girls, while Blake just stood and watched us. When Sarah looked at Blake, I noticed her expression immediately changed, and she awkwardly smiled and shook his hand and only said hi to him. Blake just nonchalantly said it was good to meet her. She then went back to talking to me, completely ignoring my Blake. When we got our menus, Blake couldn't find a meal he would enjoy and just said he would be fine with a small appetizer. Sarah unexpectedly said, "Why? Is nothing here good enough for you? Why would you agree to come here if you weren't going to get anything then?" She tried to say it like it was a joke, but any person can tell it was obviously not. I then defended Blake, claiming he could have whatever he liked, and it wasn't a big deal. Sarah then dropped it at that. Throughout our dinner, Sarah was ignoring Blake and was only trying to talk to me. Blake just stayed silent and watched us, not really caring about it, as he normally is not a big talker when meeting people. When she did include him, she would seemingly only ask him questions that would only need a one-word answer, and when he did answer, she would just give him side eyes or just say, "Okay then." I could already tell Sarah did not like Blake, but I couldn't understand why. She wasn't directly being rude to him, but I could tell when she was making snide remarks about how he was emotionless and whatnot. At one point she excused herself to the bathroom, and when she left I asked Blake if he was okay, and he assured me he was okay and just wanted me to catch up with my friend. I apologized for how she was acting, and he claimed he didn't care about it and was just happy I was with my friend. I was relieved he wasn't hurt by what was happening but still felt bad for him. After dinner, the 3 of us went for a walk to see the buildings and stores. and Sarah seemed to be more cheerful. We then came across a person walking a small puppy. I love dogs so fucking much. And Sarah and I cooed and were giggling at how cute the puppy was. Blake was just standing, watching us fawn over the puppy. Once the dog owner left, Sarah turned to Blake and she immediately became angry and asked, "How the fuck could you not even smile for a puppy? Are you seriously that soulless?" I was immediately shocked about her sudden change of tone and was about to say something, but Blake just shrugged and walked away, continuing our walk. I asked her what the hell her problem was, and she immediately apologized and said she didn't mean to yell. Our walk then became awkward. I wanted to just go home, but I also felt bad for Sarah, as she still had something else planned for after our walk that she had paid for the three of us to do, so I thought to just suck it up until it was over. I then had to use the bathroom, and we found a nearby store. I went in, and Blake and Sarah waited for me outside. When I came back, I found Sarah hysterically yelling at Blake. I immediately ran over to them and asked what the hell was going on. Sarah was in hysterics, but she kept yelling, "It's not going to happen. I will never let this happen." I asked her what she was talking about, but all she said was Blake was a S***psychopath and demanded I break up with him. I looked at Blake, who was just as shocked as I was. I kept trying to ask the both of them what had happened, but neither would answer me, which scared me. People started staring, and I desperately tried to calm Sarah down to de-escalate what was happening. Eventually, I told Blake to walk back to the car so we could go home, and I would call an Uber for Sarah. When we were alone, I was trying to get Sarah to tell me what had happened, but she just stayed silent. Blake came back to pick me up, and Sarah was just deathly staring at him, and he kept his head low. I didn't know what was happening, and just started assuming they had an argument. Thankfully, Sarah's Uber came and took her back to her hotel. Our car ride home was awkwardly silent, but as soon as we got home, I demanded to know what happened between him and Sarah. Blake just stayed silent, and at that point I was irritated with the both of them not answering my question. Blake said he couldn't say what happened, but that he was so sorry for what happened. That made me even more confused, and I asked him to please just say what had happened. He only said he swore he didn't do anything bad, but that he simply just couldn't say what happened. I then told him I was going to sleep in the guest bedroom as I just couldn't handle everything that was happening, especially since I still had no answer as to what had happened between the two of them. He said he understood and told me he loved me and went to our room. This all happened not even a few hours ago. I'm currently lying in the guest room, confused and scared as ever. I know Sarah and Blake didn't really get along, but I don't know what caused such a huge fight that neither can tell me about. An hour ago, I got a text from Sarah. I will copy and paste it here. Sarah: I'm really sorry about what happened tonight, but please listen to me. You need to break up with Blake. He is a literal S***psychopath who is only using you. He doesn't deserve you. I'm telling you this because I love you and want to protect you. Please break up with him. I haven't responded to her text, as I know if I try asking again what happened between them, she won't give me an answer. Reddit: I don't know what to do. I don't know if Sarah had said something to Blake or if Blake had something to Sarah that caused all this, but I'm scared that neither of them will tell me. Does Sarah simply just does not like Blake because he doesn't like to show his emotions? Any advice on how I can get the truth, or at least some answers, would be helpful. TLDR: my best friend and boyfriend got into a fight, and now my best friend wants me to break up with him but won't say what happened. Edit: I would like to thank you all for your input and advice. I currently am unable to sleep and would like to clarify some things. Blake is not a sociopath. The reason I added the story of when he asked me to his boyfriend was to give a slight example on how he can be vulnerable and romantic. I did not want to add this as I felt it wasn't my place to say, but for backstory, Blake and his father did not have a good relationship. All I will say is his father raised him to believe men should show no emotion, and it's the reason why Blake is not an emotional person. There are, of course, times where he would laugh and smile and even cry. He just wouldn't do it as much as an average person would. Despite Blake being an emotionless person, he still has been very nice and respectful and loving towards me, and has never been abusive or even raised his voice at me. Also, I do not believe Sarah and Blake have ever interacted before they have met last night. Blake has to work today, so I will not see him until tonight. I will be speaking to him first before Sarah and I will update as soon as I can. Also, I apologize if the story is too long or doesn't sound coherent. English is not my best of language, and this is my first time using Reddit. Take care. Edit 2. Sorry for the repost. Unfortunately, my original post was taken down. Just want to let everyone know I'm okay and still waiting for Blake to come home from work. Sarah has been blowing up my phone since her first text, but I decided not to read her texts in the moment. I want to hear Blake's side of the story first, and the way she's going about it seems uneasy to me. Relevant? Comment? Commenter 1. She obviously knows him, and both hiding things from you. It's unacceptable. Was he her ex or love interest? Maybe she hid it from you back then. OOP. I don't want to say this as I'm now not 100% sure on it, but as far as I'm concerned, they have never interacted or met before until last night. She never showed any signs other than her being weirded out by him, but that's all I can think of. OOP responds to multiple comments about the possibility of Sarah not being interested in getting to know Blake and being judgment of him right there. OOP. Thank you for your reply. The way Sarah has acted with him during our hangout was very unlike her. She never acted this way when meeting our other friends' boyfriends and girlfriends, although it could be because they were more loud and outspoken than Blake was. I'm just hoping I can figure this out. Update. January 11th, 2025, 2 days later. Hey guys, I'm back with a new update. Before I begin, I just want to thank those who took the time to read and give advice on my post. Now with the update, the night I made the post, I had some time to sit and think about everything that happened. I now know I could have handled the situation better, and I shouldn't have let Sarah continue her horrible behavior towards Blake. The fact that both of them were not telling me what was going on irritated me, and I let my anxiety get the better of me. I wanted to hear Blake out first, so I decided not to read Sarah's messages. I had turned off my phone and spent the day on my computer watching Reddit stories and learning how to use it better and going for a run to get my mind off everything. Once Blake came home, I asked if we could talk, to which he agreed. Taking the advice of a kind Redditor, I sat him down and started by apologizing for walking away from him the night before and for not defending him more during the hangout. I assured him I love and trust him deeply and that I will believe what he says to me. Eventually, Blake told me what happened. Some of you guessed it right. Blake was planning on proposing to me. The way he described it was that when I left, he confided in Sarah that he was planning to propose to me and asked if she could help choose a ring, since she was supposed to hang out with us again another day. Blake then said Sarah asked if he was being serious. And when he said he was being serious, she then started screaming and lashing out at him. She screamed at him that, "This engagement will never happen. You don't deserve her." And that's when I came outside. To say I was beyond shocked would be understandable. I then hugged him and once again apologized and asked if that was the reason he didn't want to tell me. Blake said yes, and it's because he didn't want to ruin the surprise. He then apologized for not just telling me, saying it wasn't worth keeping it as a surprise if it was causing us problems. I told him it wasn't causing us any problems and that I love him even more now. We both then hugged it out and made up. Blake then asked what Sarah had said about the situation. I admitted to him that I didn't read anything she had sent and just turned off my phone as I was scared of what she had said. After a while, I finally turned on my phone and I honestly wished I didn't. When Sarah said she wasn't going to let this engagement happen, she really did mean it. I don't know she could do this to me, but now she's got our friends, my sister and my aunt involved, and even involved my estranged dad, which was a real low blow. For context, my dad and I are no longer on speaking terms due to an incident with my former stepmom. They're no longer together. After finally reading my family and friends' messages, it sums up that Sarah had told them I'm with a S***opath and that I'm refusing to leave him even when she tried to help. So now, the people who once knew the sweet, loving Blake that I know think he is now a crazy person and are begging me to leave him. I was, and still am, beyond furious. I had spent the whole night trying to clear the air with everyone, except my dad. Unfortunately, my aunt and some of my friends are still agreeing with Sarah, which is breaking my heart. There were so many texts from Sarah, but it ranged from her begging me to answer her to her being mad that I was taking Blake's side and not hers to her apologizing for involving my dad, but saying it was for my own good. I had only sent her one text, and it goes as follows, copy and pasted. I don't understand how you expect me to take your side when you never told me why you said what you said. Blake had already told me what happened, and I can't even imagine what your side is. I can't believe you fucking lied to our friends and my family. And for you to involve my dad? How the fuck do you even have his number? Above all, you disrespected my relationship and my boyfriend. Fuck you. I have since blocked her. She never told me why she wouldn't tell me what happened, so I still don't know what her motive was on that part, other than to try to break us up. Not a great update, but Blake and I are doing okay. He has been very understanding and patient throughout all this, and I couldn't be more grateful for him. I know this might not be the end of this nightmare, so I may update again soon. I just don't know how to go about this. How can I convince my friends and my aunt that Blake is a good person? Should I somehow get Sarah to admit she was lying? Once again, thank you all for your advice. To the one Redditor who said my story was fake and that I shouldn't be with someone like Blake, I just want you to understand that these types of cartoonish situations can unfortunately happen to us. And also, Blake is one of the best things that has ever been brought into my crazy life, and I couldn't imagine my life without him, so screw you. Anyways, I may see you all again soon. Take care. Relevant. Comment? Commenter 1. Glad you blocked Sarah out of your life, and I'm glad you and Blake are doing better. I just have a few questions and suggestions, if you don't mind sharing. Is your mom still in the picture? Or have you also cut contact with her? Did your dad know about Blake before you cut contact with him? Have you ever had a previous relationship before Blake? If so, has Sarah ever acted this way before? Do you know Sarah's sexuality? I said this in your original post, but maybe she's freaked out about the proposal because she might like you. Has she ever shown any signs that she perhaps might have feelings for you? Maybe try sitting your family and friends down to explain the situation better. If you were able to convince your sister and some of your friends that Blake is a good boyfriend, maybe try asking them to help you to convince your aunt and your other friends. Unless you don't care anymore, if you want to find out why Sarah wants to break you guys up, maybe you can meet with her in a public place and make her explain everything and why she's been acting like this. Oh, up. Unfortunately, my mother passed away when I was young, but remembering her, I know she would have gone bananas if someone was trying to stop me from having an engagement. Yes, my dad did meet Blake, but at the time he was not my boyfriend. At the time, my dad simply didn't care about the friends I had. When he met Blake, he did think he was creepy and asked if he was depressed, to which I of course shut down quickly and since kept Blake away from my father. I've only ever had one date when I was 15 before Blake, but never a relationship. He is my first real boyfriend. Sarah did help me get ready for my first date, so I guess she was excited for me. She did not act out like how she did with Blake. As far as I'm concerned, Sarah is straight. She has never confided in me that she might be any other sexuality. She has had boyfriends in the past. She may have been touchy with me, like touching my hand or hitting my shoulder when we share a laugh, but that's about all I can think of. Thank you so much for your suggestions. My sister is currently living with my aunt, and I have asked her if she can help me talk to my aunt about this. Did Sarah have her fair share of boyfriends? Could she be jealous of OOP being in a relationship with Blake? OOP. Sarah has had her fair share of boyfriends before. Her last relationship lasted a year before they broke up, which was about 2 years ago. She had moved away from our city after we graduated, so we would mostly FaceTime every other day. This is the first time I've seen her since after we graduated. Blake has been my only boyfriend, so she hasn't had the chance to nitpick people I've dated, but she's never done this to our other friends' boyfriends and girlfriends. I have a feeling this could all be coming jealousy, but why it's only directed at me is what's confusing me on that theory. Commenter 2. If your family and friends are so ready to believe her, that tells me you haven't introduced Blake to them. Or not very often. Bit of life advice. Him hiding all his emotions is not healthy and will come out to bite you in the ass at some point. He keeps everything bottled up, likely part of that whole men just get on with it. They're not allowed to cry, laugh, show love, or any other positive emotion. They can show only anger, disdain, and arrogance, in short, negativity. If you have kids, if you have sons, will you want them to grow up with this same mentality? He needs to learn to trust and express himself more, or this kind of thing will happen more often. It will damage his ability to go further in life because no one trusts a closed-off, emotionless person. Whether he gets therapy or just starts to loosen up, he needs to learn to be more outwardly expressive. He doesn't have to tell everyone his life story or be the life of the party. But he needs to learn he's allowed to smile at things, to chuckle, to shake his head or express himself in some way. OP. The only person I haven't introduced Blake to as my boyfriend is my dad. He's only met him once as my friend. My friends and my family have met Blake a good amount of times, so for them to suddenly believe Sarah over the times they met, Blake makes me question whether Sarah had said something worse that I'm still not aware of, or that they have bad opinions on Blake that they think behind my back, which is what I'm worried for. The topic of us having kids has came up before, and of course Blake does not want our kids to be emotionless or want to hurt me, even though he never has, which is what he's tried to go to therapy for. Having that said, it's not easy to undo almost 20 years of having your dad mentally abuse you and drill into your head that men don't show any emotion, and a lot of his therapists haven't helped him. He doesn't want our kids to grow up like he did, so he is still trying. I apologize for not mentioning that part in the post. He does show some vulnerability moments with me. For example, I've seen him cry, full-on laugh, and smile. It's simply just not easy for him to do it to people he's not close with. Commenter 3. I don't know. Why would he ask someone who had been openly hostile to him all day to help pick a ring for you? OP. When I was a little girl, I used to love to wear jewelry. Though some were plastic and fake, I would always wear rings and necklaces. Sarah and I even had matching friendship bracelets. When I went into 8th grade, I stopped wearing jewelry. Since I lost an important ring, I have feared of losing any other piece of jewelry since. The reason Blake asked her was because we were supposed to go to the mall for our next hangout, and since she was the only one who saw my jewelry phase, except my sister and my aunt, he wanted her opinion on what he thought I would like. He said had she never visited us, he would have asked my sister, but since Sarah was already here, he wanted to quickly get the ring. Though I now would have preferred if he had waited to just ask my sister, but it melts my heart that he couldn't wait. Commenter 4. I'm guessing those family and friends have always had reservations around his personality, but now that shit-faced Sarah is jumping and hollering around, it's made them think about different interactions with him and blowing them out of proportion. Not that she is owed it, but maybe Aunt knowing that he comes from an abusive family, if she doesn't already, will help her understand the way he holds himself more. People are so shit, but I'm happy for you both. Did he actually end up proposing or... OP. She doesn't know about his past, so maybe explaining it could help, but I only would want to do it if Blake is open to sharing it. Thanks for the advice. As for proposal, no, Blake didn't propose yet. He doesn't have the ring, so he won't be able to do it yet. He's a little upset that the surprise is ruined, but I've assured him he doesn't need to be, as I definitely will be surprised the day he goes down on one knee. I'm already squealing at the thought. New update. Update #2. January 19th, 2025. Hey Reddit heads, I'm back again. Sorry for the wait. I'm here with another update. Well, here we go again. After my last update, Blake and I had a discussion regarding the issue with my family and friends. In my last post, I stated that Sarah has told my sister, aunt, estranged father, and my friends that Blake was an abusive partner who was a sociopath and that I was refusing to leave him. I invited my sister over and asked her what exactly Sarah had said to her about Blake and me. My sister told me that Sarah had told her that while we were hanging out, Blake had been acting cold and rude towards me. She claimed he was ignoring me and lashed out when I tried to talk to him, TF. She then supposedly tried to tell me he was acting toxic towards me and that I should leave. To which I supposedly refused and told her to mind her own fucking business. Then when I left, Blake had told her he was going to marry me, and that's when she lashed out. So other than that last part, she told a whole big fat lie. After some confirmation from other friends, it was clear that's the story she told. I was pissed. And so was Blake, especially since his proposal was ruined. Some commenters and even my sister suggested I get everyone who was told this lie to meet with me and clear the air, so we decided to do that. I had made a group chat of those that had contacted me about Blake besides my dad, and the others I was able to convince, and told them that I needed to have a face-to-face talk with them all, and that this all needed to end. As much as I wanted to just do it in text, I wanted them to all see how serious this was. So, we all mutually agreed to meet on Monday night. Come Monday night, after everyone sat down, I started off by saying how amusing it was how they all instantly believed Sarah over me, and how angry and disappointed I was in them. I then told the real story of what happened, on how Sarah acted towards Blake in every word she said. I spared no detail. I then made it crystal clear that Blake was a good boyfriend and still the same good, caring person they met, and I'm not going to go out of my way to prove it, especially if they're going to believe someone who had only met Blake once over me. I ended my ramble by stating that anyone who tries to tell me to break up with Blake again or call him any names will be cut off. Thankfully, they all finally believed me and have apologized to Blake for how they acted, and to me for automatically believing Sarah. Though I mainly just wanted them to apologize to Blake. I thought that would be the end of it. I was able to convince everyone that Sarah was lying. I had Sarah and my dad blocked, and Blake and I were as happy as ever. But I spoke too soon. On Thursday, while I was at work, I got a notice from our security team telling me my girlfriend was here to see me. Huh? I obviously knew who it was. However, I went down to see her anyway, as I feared if I didn't go see her, she would lash out like how she did with Blake. When I saw her, she looked happy to see me, but I was pissed. I told her she needed to leave and never try to come near me and not to dare to go near Blake or I was going to call the police. She started her crocodile tears and told me this was the only way to talk to me. She told me after I told everyone the real story. They all got mad at her for lying and most of our mutual friends cut her off. I told her she deserved it for trying to ruin my relationship. She started to apologize and told me she didn't want to lose me and that she wanted to explain herself. At that point, I was already scared and embarrassed as she started getting loud and we got some stares. I told her she had her chances to tell me her side. Instead, she chose to spread a lie and try to turn everyone against Blake. Again, she kept trying to apologize and said she didn't mean for all this to happen. I gave her one last warning to leave, or I will have security make her leave. Thankfully and surprisingly, she did leave. I was on edge the rest of my shift, afraid my boss would have come in and told me what he saw, or that Sarah would have come back. Then I kept getting messages from a random number, calling me a stupid B-word and that they hated me. I had no idea who it was from. My strong guess was my father, since it sounds like him. But every time I blocked the number, a new one would text me. After I got home, Blake was waiting for me and asked what was wrong. I confided in him what happened. I don't know why I became so emotional, but I started to cry. I honestly was just too stressed out by everything that was happening, and I had a small fear all this would make Blake break up with me over all this. What did this beautiful man say? He reassured me that was never going to happen, and that I was his girl, and that he smiled on the inside the night I was defending him to my friends and aunt. To the Redditor who DM'd me telling me I don't deserve Blake, you are right. I really don't deserve such an amazing boyfriend. I thank my lucky stars every single day that I was gifted such a gentleman. Ever since then, I've been getting a lot of unknown calls and texts. I've taken screenshots of all of them before blocking, as I will probably need to file a police report. My sister and some of my friends suggested I meet with Sarah and have her admit everything she's done and even finally get her side of the story. Blake told me to choose whatever I feel safe with. After talking long and thinking about it with Blake, I have decided to go with meeting her. I had unblocked her and told her I was open to hearing her out now on the condition we meet at a public place. And she told me the full truth. I had sent that message a few hours ago and she hasn't responded, which is scaring me. I know you all were probably hoping this update would be about Sarah finally telling us what's going on. I'm strongly hoping she will agree to the meeting so I can finally understand everything. Do you all think it's a good idea to meet up with her? I would love to hear your guys' theories on what Sarah will tell me since my sister already has so many LOL. Before I end this already long post, I want to thank all of you again for your comments and suggestions. A lot of you have been helpful. I also wanted to clarify some comments to the 90% of you asking if Blake might be autistic. To that I don't know. I don't know if he's ever taken a test to confirm it or if he has but never told me, but I will not push him to do either if he doesn't want to. And yes, he has tried therapy before, but it didn't help him as most of his therapists weren't helpful to him. He is, however, currently looking for a new therapist. Secondly, this is the last time I'm going to say this, but Blake is not abusive or a bad person. Say it with me now. I cannot stress or give any more examples of how many times he has been nothing but a good and considerate person. Blake is my gentle giant. Seriously, he's very tall. It really saddens me all the accusations people like him get just for not showing any emotional sentiments. Yes, we have had small arguments and fights early in our relationship, but what relationship hasn't? Never has he even raised his voice at me. Thirdly, to those asking why I haven't heard Sarah's side yet. It's because she wouldn't tell me her side. From the night the event happened, I literally went to her first to ask her what was wrong, and she even had the chance to text me literally anything if her problem was Blake being nearby. But she didn't. Instead, she goes and not only tells people lies, but then involves my dad. I will now soon be hearing her side, if she actually tells me this time. And lastly, to those of you who were making fun of me for saying to think of Blake as like Eminem or Shadow, I'm sorry, okay? I'm not good at describing someone. 2 weeks before my first post, we had seen the new Sonic movie. I grew up watching and playing Sonic LOL, and Shadow pretty much reminded me of Blake, so please give me a break. Anyways, I will obviously be back with another update after my conversation with Sarah. Wish me luck and take care. Relevant comment? Does OOP think Sarah will bring the dad to the meeting to confront her about Blake? OP, even if she does, I will not care. I only want this meeting to have her confess to the lying and possibly the unknown calls if she's the one doing it. Commenter 1. Meeting with Sarah feels dangerous. Like the previous person said, don't go alone if you do meet up with her. And also, don't leave your home and vehicles unguarded at this time because Sarah sounds absolutely deranged. She will not tell the truth, ever. And she might have people on her side that she has convinced. Please file a police report, because this whole situation sounds very unsafe. Commenter 2. If you are finally going to see Sarah, please don't let yourself be convinced to meet in a private place. Talk in a public place and don't go alone. Go with someone who can help you in case something physical happens. Also, record the conversation so she can't lie again. Protect yourself in every possible way. Commenter 3. Someone showing up at your place of work to make drama or, worse, trying to do an intervention for someone experiencing domestic violence has crossed so many lines. If you were actually in a DV situation, this is the kind of behavior that could escalate it and get someone killed. I am happy you are in a loving relationship, but this is not a person acting rationally unless she is deliberately trying to hurt you. There is no angle from which her behavior is appropriate. When I had something similar happen to me, my HR worked with me to get me extra security and the police notified. If you do see this person, please have a safety plan and do not go alone. If you can, record the interaction. Story 15. Aida for telling my housemate she can't give me unsolicited advice? Original post, January 12, 2025. I, 27F, have a strange living situation. I live with a family, Chris, 65M, Danielle, 59F, and their daughter, and do household chores in exchange for rent. I've lived here for 19 months. It's mostly smooth sailing. I work full-time and am applying to law school. Danielle has some issues with boundaries. She doesn't understand why she can't enter my room without permission, for example. And I know it's both due to age differences and the fact that they allow me to live in their house for free. I have to be very careful when enforcing boundaries. Yesterday, I made dinner for everyone after a full day of chores. Around 10 p.m., as I was finishing the dishes, Danielle told me I needed to steam clean the carpet in the living room because the cats had peed all over it. I did, and as I was putting the steam cleaner away, Danielle entered and said she wanted me to do another room. Because it was 10:30 at this point and I still wanted to work on an application before bed, I politely but firmly said, "I'm not going to do that." I probably should have said, "I'll do it tomorrow," but I was exhausted, so I just said no. I put the machine away, submitted my application, and went to bed. Tonight, as I was finishing up my meal prep for the week, Danielle cornered me in the kitchen. "I don't want to fight about this," she said, "but I wanted to mention something. Last night, when you told me you weren't going to clean the other room, I found it rude. You should be careful when you say things like that at work so that you don't get fired." I was floored. I snapped, "Danielle, you haven't had a job since before I was born. You don't get to give me advice about how to act in the workplace." Danielle rolled her eyes and huffed, "See, I didn't want to fight about this," and walked out of the room. I called after her, "Then maybe don't bring it up?" Danielle hasn't spoken to me since, and I don't know what's coming. For context, Danielle has only had one job in her whole life, from age 22 to age 25. After that, she quit to raise kids. I grew up very poor. I have been working since I was 14 and supporting myself since I turned 18. They offered to start our arrangement in 2023 because they needed help around the house and I was struggling financially. As for Danielle's work advice, I currently work as a regional manager at a small firm. Not only is her advice outdated, but I can't take it. I'm a people manager. A lot of my day-to-day job involves being polite but unyielding. I think she was frustrated by my setting a boundary, and that's why she brought it up. I know part of my frustration is that I feel powerless to protest most of the time. I will be moving out in August of this year when I go to law school, hopefully. And my goal is just to make it until then. I'm also really frustrated that Danielle felt like she could say whatever she wanted and then walk away as if I had no right to feel anything. Ada for what I said? Some of OOP's comments. Commenter, info, do you have a rental agreement in writing? Work exchange needs to be clearly defined, including but not limited to hours, availability, no contact places, times, tasks, etc. Someone who's demanding you steam clean 2 rooms at 10:30 p.m. is highly suspect. Chores is too often seen as women's work, aka undervalued and unpaid invisible labor. However, invisible labor done by women is incredibly expensive both in cost and time, aka you may well be doing more than would cover the cost of your rent. Also, I'm inferring from your post that you're most likely downplaying their requests. A P. There is no agreement in writing. I have tried to bring this up on previous occasions because of Danielle's difficulty with boundaries and the sheer amount of work that I do, but it is not taken well. Danielle and Chris are very insistent that I am not their tenant and that they are not my landlords. I am their guest. Danielle is also very insistent that she does not want to be called my boss or supervisor in any capacity. To answer other comments here as well, my current position does not pay enough for me to live on my own. I realize that the situation is probably predatory, but because there are only 8 months left of this, I plan to just stick it out. It has saved me a lot of money, and I'm thankful for that. Top commenter YTA. Not for saying no, but for how you said it. You were not polite. Also, Danielle is not your housemate. She and her husband are your landlord's bosses. You may not be paying rent, but you are paying by being live-in help. So when you told Danielle, "I won't be doing that," instead of "I'll do it tomorrow," you were rude to your boss. Also, her advice wasn't outdated. If you spoke to your supervisor at your job that way, there would definitely be a follow-up conversation about your choice of words. OOP, downvoted. Danielle and Chris are very insistent that I am not their employee or tenant, and that they are not my bosses or landlords. I am their guest, and they are doing this out of the goodness of their hearts. Commenter, downvoted. Definitely NTA and good for you. May I ask how you came to live with this family, though? Are they related? Why are you bothering with all this weird-ass shit and her bossing you around? OOP. They're actually my best friend's parents. He suggested the arrangement because he knew I needed help. When I moved in, I was a teacher and struggling to afford a studio apartment. Since I moved in, I changed careers and decided I wanted to pursue law school. I took the LSAT 3 times last year on top of all this. I can count on one hand the number of times I've refused a request. I've bleached the showers after midnight, rose at 5 a.m. to make requested meals before work, and other things like that without protesting. I see this as an opportunity to make my life better in the long term while surviving short term. I just wanted to say no this time because, truthfully, I physically couldn't handle fulfilling the request. Danielle was insistent it had to be done immediately because they wanted to go to bed at 11 p.m., but I just couldn't do it. UP is voted YTA. Mini update in comments January 13th, 2025, next day. I was voted the asshole, which I understand. What I do adds up to about $2,000 per month if you go by the standard of $20 per hour, or about 100 hours month. Most of those hours are concentrated on weekends and 2-3 evenings per week. I make enough food that there are leftovers so I can have a couple of nights off. Included in those hours is a lot of care for their adult daughter who lives with us and is disabled. If I babysit the house pets while the housemates go on vacation, which happens a lot, I charge a $1.20/day stipend. We have 2 dogs, 3 cats, a gecko, and some fish. One of the cats is mine. This is why I cleaned the carpet without protest, because it's just as likely the piss was his as any of the other cats. I've said no to requests 3 times in 19 months, and each time has been met with pushback like this. All 3 were due to the time of night they were asked. A lot have called this a form of modern-day slavery, and I see where you're coming from. I've been fine with the situation remaining largely undefined, because even when I protest at chores, I haven't been threatened with eviction. I entered into this situation at a time when I was overwhelmed and desperate. It might be predatory, but it was the best opportunity I had. I could have protected myself better going in. As to why I stay in it, it's because there's an end date in sight and it will set me up well to keep funneling money into savings for the next few months. If I were evicted, it would suck, but I would be fine. It's not ideal, but it works. I recognize that I should have worded my response better than I did at the time. However, I do want to push back on the idea that I have to do everything they say because they own the house. If a boss demands overtime from me that's not previously agreed on, I am allowed to say no, and I have done it many times without affecting my employment whatsoever. In fact, my current boss, who I've done this with the most, often using the same wording as here, wrote me an excellent letter of recommendation for law school. Times have changed since the 1980 SS, and saying no to bad demands is becoming more and more acceptable. What she meant when she said, "You should be careful when you say things like that at work," was that I shouldn't be assertive at all in a situation where I am a subordinate, which I very much think is outdated advice. I was not invalidating the difficult work of raising a family that Danielle did. I would not dream of offering someone else parenting advice because I haven't been in their shoes. Hypothetically, if the last time I had raised a child was 30 years ago, I also wouldn't give advice on raising a kid in the iPad generation. Danielle should not be doing the same to me about work. She is not my professional boss. She has never worked in my field. She knows that she is not my landlady either. If she were, there would be a whole lot of rules she would need to respect that she doesn't want to, such as entering my room without notice. Again, because I am getting some benefit from the situation, I don't and won't threaten legal action here, because I have enough documentation to protect myself. In addition, Chris, Danielle, and I all have personal stakes involved in this going well. We have a ton of mutual friends, one of whom is their son and my best friend. Danielle and Chris have some chronic illnesses that make housework hard for them, so they are also getting a lot out of this situation. I plan to apologize and smooth things over. I will follow much of the advice mentioned here about protecting myself better moving forward. Perhaps naively, I hope this will end well. Danielle and I actually get along very well most of the time. We don't hate each other by any means, and we both ultimately want to see the other happy. That's why this has worked for so long. To everyone who says that this situation proves I don't have what it takes to be a lawyer, don't worry. You will probably never be my client. Update, same post, January 14th, 2025, 2 days from OG post. Update. First, as an aside, A lot of the comments here missed the point. Danielle was not angry with me for refusing to do an additional chore at 10:30 p.m. That was not the issue. Even by the most generous of understandings, demanding additional overtime work at the end of a 14-hour shift is unreasonable, and she knew that. During our follow-up discussion, she added a detail I had totally forgotten about. The second room in question has a large potted fiddle-leaf fig tree in it, and in order to steam clean the additional room, the tree needs to be moved. Neither she or I were able to move it after multiple attempts, so at that point I said, "Until Chris and I can figure out a way to move this, the steam cleaning will have to wait. I know you want it done tonight, but I will not be doing that." Very important context that I missed adding when I was angry. The issue in question was the exchange the next day. As to how I responded the second day when she came to confront me on my wording, for that, I understand now that I was absolutely the asshole. As one of my close friends put it to me, those are inside thoughts. My context about her work history was also unnecessary and irrelevant. Last night, I approached Danielle and opened the conversation with a profuse apology. No qualifiers, no protests, just that I was rude during our kitchen conversation and I needed to apologize. She, in turn, immediately apologized for her incredibly poor introduction to the follow-up conversation and for cornering me in the kitchen while I was otherwise occupied instead of meeting with me at a more neutral time. Chris then joined us, and we had an extensive conversation. During the conversation, I asked them to define how they view our arrangement. They were immediately very clear that they don't see me as a tenant, employee, or servant. I pointed out that if that is how they want to view things, then I need to be free to say no extra requests. They were receptive to this. I also pointed out that in our state, I could either be considered a tenant or a live-in domestic worker, but due to the length of time I've resided here and the conditions in place, I am definitely not considered just a guest. They did get offended that I see our relationship as fundamentally a transaction, which I found kind of funny, because while they have the freedom to frame it in their minds as, "We're helping this person out and she's helping us out," it's wise for me to see it differently. I do have obligations to them, and my life has substantially larger implications should this not work out. In the end, they agreed that because they aren't landlords, and I am not their employee, in their minds, I should be receiving more freedom than I have been given. Chris and Danielle have chronic illnesses that make most of the work I do very difficult for them, including a lot of the care I provide for their adult daughter who lives with us. We then outlined, again, exactly what my responsibilities are and what they're not. Finally, to my surprise, they apologized for previous invasions of privacy and agreed that we would put a lock on my room door. It is an interior lock only, so I can't lock it while I'm gone, but I am fine with the progress. I was never threatened with eviction or anything like that. People can be emotionally mature enough to talk through issues instead of immediately pulling a metaphorical trigger, which is what happened here. After the conversation, I typed out a long email detailing the terms of my living here as it currently stands and had them send a confirmation in reply. While it is not officially a lease, it is something in writing outlining responsibilities that was agreed to by all parties. We agreed that my monthly hours would be reduced to 80 instead of the roughly 100 I have been doing. If the value of that is calculated according to the federal minimum wage, that's a value of $580 every 4 weeks, which is more than most rooms for rent are in our area. Of course, the labor I do is somewhat skilled and has a market value of at least double, but I use the federal minimum wage for the sake of argument. I also established that the latest I would be available for housework is 9:30 p.m., barring some form of emergency, and if a task absolutely requires going past that time, I will be taking that time back on a different day. I know that I will laugh at this in contracts class in the future, but for now, I'm fine with what it is. Like I said in a comment, it's not ideal, but it works. I'm not in a position where I desperately need this anymore, but I'm going to stay here until August because being able to funnel what otherwise would be paid in rent into savings is doing wonders to set me up for the future. To everyone that commented something along the lines of, "You have to do everything she says," or you're the help, or you're entitled, I encourage you to think about that perspective more. Employees, household help, and any people in a subordinate position are still very much an individual and deserving of basic respect to their space, their time, and their person. No laws, no matter how extensive, take those basic rights away. Also, if you said it was my fault for being in the situation in the first place, kick rocks. We are all working through our own situations where we pick the best option available even if it isn't perfect. That's not weakness or stupidity, that's life.